A voice comes from somewhere saying that City Z has recently encountered several cases of animal attacks on people and asks citizens not to leave their homes at night. The main character walks with a cart through a supermarket. The voice reports that all necessary services are already investigating what happened and asks not to panic. The main character with gray hair and an earphone in his ear looks at the canned food and thought that it would never be a bad idea to stock up on non-perishable products. The voice reports that in the city of X, several people have been infected with an unknown virus, and cases of flu have become more frequent in the city, and the media will continue to keep abreast of what is happening. The woman with dark hair says that she heard that the old man was in good health, but a couple of days ago he retired. Her interlocutor suggests that this is due to this respiratory disease. The woman says that most likely yes, because he didn't even last 2 days. The interlocutor says that recently there have been so many cases of this disease. The dark-haired woman asks if the government still hasn't found out why. The interlocutor replies that times are far from peaceful. The main character puts things in the trunk of a pickup truck. He tightens the things in the trunk with a rope. He mentally runs through a list of things: seeds, instant food, frozen food, meat, essentials, snacks, canned goods. He adds that all that remains is to refuel the car, and then quickly return to Han and deal with the deer that the main character killed this morning. A pickup truck drives along a road among the hills. He makes a call from his smartphone while driving. The interlocutor asks Tianjan what about his proposal. The main character says that he can find a job so that he can not hide his eyes when talking to others. The interlocutor agrees, and the main character says that he will not send her to the shelter. The interlocutor tells the main character in a raised tone that they are not blood relatives and asks not to mention this marriage to him if he wants to bring a burden with him. The main character is watching the road and says that Li Han is his younger sister and an important member of the family. The interlocutor asks why she should raise a child who is nobody to her, and the main character is enough for her. She adds that if he doesn't take her seriously, they won't get married and break up. The main character drives a car past a black spot. He agrees with the girl. He suddenly notices something and a bead of sweat runs down his left cheek. The protagonist's car crashes into a goat and now its hood is covered in blood. Tianjan pressed himself against the steering wheel of the car. He looks at the bloody glass and wonders what it was, guessing it was a dog. He looks at the animal's hooves and assumes it was a goat. The goat stands up and trembles, and its eyes glow red. He looks intently at the main character. The main character pressed his hand to his forehead and wonders if he was wounded in the head and is still alive. The goat moves out of the way. The goat climbs into the bushes and disappears from sight. The main character looks towards the goat with concern on his face. He turns his gaze towards the front window and thought it was good that he didn't need to call the police. He parked the car next to a metal fence. Tianjan takes the box from the trunk and hears him being loudly called brother. He turns towards the voice. A girl with blue hair and 2 dogs run towards the main character. Li Han shouts to the main character that he is back, and he tells her not to run like that. The girl with a smile on her face tells the main character that he bought so much and adds that she can help carry it. The main character hands her a bag of groceries and tells her to take it. The girl with a bag over her head says that she did everything he ordered, namely, she fed the cows, changed the water and watered the garden. Brother and sister and dogs are heading towards the house. Li Han says that she is so tired and wants to eat the stew that the main character cooks so deliciously. Tianjan asks how about venison and carrot stew. He looks at the dog with a smile on his face. She chews leaves that she pulled out of the bush. The girl hits the dog in the face and tells her that he is bad and that he shouldn't tear up the plants. The main character and his sister are walking along a rural road while the dogs are standing opposite each other. Traces remain on the ground. A bull stands to the side of the main character. He chews ordinary grass. His eye turns red and his gaze now looks creepy. He looks at the main character, the girl and the dog, and there is a fly on his eye. The pan is on the stove with wood inside. Li Han tells the main character that she has never seen a solar eclipse before and asks if the sky will be as dark as night. A voice from the radio reports that today is a wonderful day, and an eclipse will soon begin in this century. The girl eats the pie with pleasure and says that it's delicious and her brother hunts and cooks better than anyone. The main character with a smile on his face says the eclipse will not be like at night, and the sun will simply darken. And to see this you need to wear glasses. The radio starts counting down. The girl points her finger at something in the window and asks what it is. You can see the black sun outside the window. The main character quickly got up from the table. The black sun rises against the sky. Electric currents emanate from the chandelier in the room. The girl crossed her arms and asked why it was so dark and cold. A black dog barks loudly at someone. The radio speech is interrupted. The girl points somewhere and tells the main character to look there. The main character turns his gaze. He goes to the exit of the house. A snowstorm started outside and the main character wonders why a snowstorm suddenly started in the summer. The main character tells the girl that he will go and close the cattle and will return soon, and then asks the dog Ziobai to look after the girl. The sister asks her brother to come back quickly because it is cold outside. The main character tells the girl not to worry and asks the dog Ziobai to come with him. Tianjan covers his face and says what a terrible storm, and then asks Ziobai if he is okay. A blue glow emanates from the black sun. The main character closed his eye and clenched his teeth. The sun begins to glow bright blue. Tree with leaves covered with snow. Behind the main character is the silhouette of an animal. Tianjan looks at the sun and says it can't be. Streams of blue energy come from the black sun. The black dog turned his gaze and growled. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's face and he thinks that the plants, the snowstorm, the sun are too strange. A dog with glowing orange eyes barks loudly. The bull stands close to the main character, and the dog jumps from his spot. The main character turns back, wondering what is happening. The dog clutches the bull, and the main character runs forward. He stops and rolls his feet in the snow. He watches what is happening while sitting on the ground. The bull and the dog look at each other menacingly. The main character ran, thinking that his bow should be nearby. He sees a sports bow on a tree stump. The dog was pushed away and he hit himself hard. Tianjan pulled the bowstring and mentally wished the bull to die. While aiming, a blue aiming interface appears in front of the bow. The main character looks at him in surprise and thought, what else is this? He released the bowstring to fire the shot. 4 arrows are aimed at a mad bull. They hit him in the head and he screams loudly. The main character clenched his fist and said, great. The angry bull lowered its muzzle and is preparing to run. He runs straight at the main character, who realized that he is not dead yet. He reaches into his pocket and says something is wrong. An interface appears in front of him, where it is written that the number of shells is 0, and there are 3 living organisms nearby. Tianjan reaches for the arrows in his pocket, thinking that it doesn't matter and he needs to take the arrow first. He realized that the quiver was empty and the bull was beating him. The main character is pushed away due to the blow of the animal. He sits on the ground next to the dog while an angry bull stands in front of them. Tianjan turns to his dog. The dog barks towards the main character's house. The main character looks at his house and says that everything is bad, because if this cow suddenly mutated, then Li Han is in danger. The girl stands in front of Ziobai, who looks angry. She clenched her fists and asks Ziobai what happened to him. The dog is trembling and his eyes glow red. He opens his mouth and growls at the girl. The main character kicks the dog with his foot. He gritted his teeth and thought that Ziobai was also mad. Tianjan takes the girl and says that he will take her to a safe place and asks her not to go out under any circumstances. He heads towards the exit and says that Ziobai is very dangerous now and under no circumstances should she go out, and the girl agrees. The main character walks through a snowstorm. He heads towards the red and white barn. The girl pressed herself close to the main character. A blue interface window appears in front of Tianjan. He looks at the notification and thought that this was not a hallucination. According to the notification, there are 4 living organisms nearby. He opens the barn and, leaving his sister, tells her not to go out no matter what happens and asks her to believe her brother. According to the system window, there are 5 living organisms nearby. He quickly slams the barn doors. Ziobai scratches the main character from the back. The dog jumps away, and the main character breathes deeply. Li Han knocks on the door and calls for his brother. Ziobai appears and jumps on Ziobai. The main character holds his shoulder and notices that Ziobai has appeared. The main character runs away from the bull and asks Ziobai to detain him, and then says that he will come as soon as he sorts it out. He takes an axe out of a stump. He turns towards the angry animals. He stands near the tree and waits for a moment. The main character dodges a bull that hits its head on a tree. His horn is stuck in a tree. Tianjan swings his axe at the bull. He tells him to die with an angry expression. The main character is bitten on the neck by Ziobai. He looks at the white dog and thought that Ziobai was killed. The bull plunged its horns into the main character's torso. The main character spits blood out of his mouth and thinks that the fangs continue to pierce. A system notification appears saying that the Doomsday survival game is being installed. Tianjan, with a lifeless expression, thinks what kind of sound this is and forces himself to stay awake. Many blue system windows appear in front of him in the middle of a blue space, and he wonders what kind of kaleidoscope this is. He thinks about how noisy it is and asks to kill at least these 2 and not make noise. A notification appears saying that Tianjan is a player. He tries to force himself to move. The bull's horn pierced the protagonist's chest. He drops his axe and thought that at least his sister should survive. A notification appears indicating that the Doomsday survival game has been successfully installed. The main character drowns in the ocean. Notifications appear indicating that player Tian Jan has successfully installed the Doomsday survival game. Shelter, Level 1 Ownerless Estate. Shelter, Level 1 Bonus Ability, Eye of Truth. The main character sinks lower and lower into the ocean. Rank, Guest House. Tian Jan opens his eyes. To upgrade to the Fortress rank you need points, 8 million. A bright blue light appears. He wakes up in the real world. The protagonist's wounds healed and he thought that he was still alive. He holds onto the place where he was wounded. He wonders if the cow killed him like that and adds that the clothes in that place are torn and there are traces of blood. He lifts his torso off the ground. He notices that his wound has disappeared and wonders where Xiao Bai's bulls went. The main character remembers how they stuck a horn into him and he coughed up blood. He holds his head and closed one eye. He looked the other way. The bull's body is divided into two halves. On the other side there is a dog lying on the ground. The main character sits among them. A bead of sweat runs down his face and he wonders what happened after he lost consciousness. He thought that man was not capable of such destructive power. His look looks surprised. The main character's eyes glow blue. A system notification appears that identifies the player as Tian Jan. The main character is enveloped in blue, crackling energy. The dog grabbed onto the main character. A notification appears that welcomes the player to the Doomsday survival game and activates the player status. He punches the dog, deforming its face. A powerful stream of blue energy pushes the dog away. The main character holds his axe in his hand. He attacks the bull with it, and the blow is accompanied by a trace of powerful energy. The bull's body is cut into two parts. The main character opened his mouth slightly during the battle. The main character has his torso bent and looking down. It shows a severe hack wound. He makes a high jump. The main character jumped on an angry bull. A powerful flash of purple light comes from his strike. The main character opens his eyes. He spreads his arms to the sides and screams. He is breathing heavily due to tension. Tian Jan thought he had died, but his wound had healed, and this power was not his. He suggests that it's probably all because of this system. Many system windows appear in front of him and he thought that it looked like a game. A notification appears with information that the game installation was completed successfully. The shelter was successfully linked. The store was activated. And the newbie reward was issued. The main character, with a surprised look, thought that according to the logic of computer games, there would now be a task. Blue crackling energy rushes over the main character. He thought that the information goes directly into the brain. A notification appears that the first period of destruction has arrived and there are 30 days left until the next period of destruction, and the world will be destroyed by natural disasters, and shelter is the only fortress that you can rely on. The player's task, to survive in the Doomsday game, and also to make the shelter the most reliable citadel. He opened his mouth in surprise and thought that this was just the beginning. He adds that the first wave poisoned the land on which people survived and wondered what the second wave would be. The main character looks at Xiao Bai and thought that he was unconscious, and according to the system, Xiao Bai and the bull mutated due to the fact that they accidentally ate plants that were poisoned after radiation. He looks at the dog with a serious expression on his face. The main character tied him up in a cloth and thought that the mutation leads to physical enhancement and abnormal ferocity, which is why he needs to be tied up and locked up so that no one gets hurt. He adds that he needs to check on Li Han. Tian Jan opens the barn doors. He goes down the stairs. He presses the switch and realizes that the electricity has not yet been repaired. The main character looks at his smartphone and thought that there was no signal here, and thought that with diesel generators this is not such a problem. He looks around and thought it was strange that there was no sound. The main character sees his sister's legs behind the box. He shouts the name Li Han. He approaches her and asks what happened. A notification appears above her head stating that her name is Li Han and she is in a sleep state. The girl opens her sleepy eyes. The main character, with concern on his face, asks her why she didn't spread the mattress. The girl replies that she was waiting for her brother downstairs, and then some white light flashed and she doesn't remember anything else, and then asks her brother if he's okay. The main character tells Li Han not to worry because it's all over. My sister asks how Xiao Bai is. The main character replies that he was injured, so she can't see him for now and invites her to sleep here while he runs errands. He leaves the girl behind and leaves the premises. Tian Jan went outside and thought that there were no more mutated cattle outside and he needed to understand how this system differs from computer games. The main character switches the interface and notices the newcomer's reward. He says that he was hoping to get some kind of special weapon or ability, and it seems that he will not be able to become strong right away. He sees a question mark in the upper right corner and wonders what it means. The main character goes to the store menu and notices that the currency in the system is points. He notices seeds that can germinate even in poisoned soil. He looks at the prices for seeds and realizes that he does not have enough currency for them. The main character is sitting on the floor, and Xiao Bai is lying unconscious in a cage. The main character thought that he had just checked the supplies at home and that everything that had been in direct contact with the ground was more or less contaminated. He adds that it still takes time for the network to be restored and suggests that in the outside world the situation is clearly not happy. He touches his face with a thoughtful look. The main character remembers the maddened bull that attacked him. He made a serious expression on his face. He remembered the distraught Xiao Bai. The main character thought that it was necessary to destroy the sources of infection. The black sun flies against the background of the black sky. The main character stands in front of a huge fire. Particles of fire rush past him. He approaches the wooden door near the stairs. He entered the room with a lot of firearms and bladed weapons and thought that the diesel generator was turned on. The main character takes the gun and examines it. He puts the gun under his shirt. Tianjian puts the walkie-talkie next to his sleeping sister. He opens the barn doors. The main character is driving a car along the road. Crows with red eyes fly over the car. Wild owl, wild boar, wolf and bull run after the main character. He holds a pistol in his hand and thought that he had attracted all the mutated animals in the area, and the sooner he dealt with them, the better. The main character is followed by an armored car that fires a machine gun. Tianjian grabbed the steering wheel tightly and gritted his teeth. An armored car blocks the path of the protagonist's car. The main character stops the car with concern on his face. The armored car's machine gun aims at the protagonist's car. A soldier in a bulletproof vest sits behind a heavy machine gun. The main character raises his hands up with concern on his face. The machine gunner says on the radio that the alarm on the road has been eliminated. The soldier has a chevron on his hand. The main character thought that these were military men from a neighboring base, and the city was probably in complete chaos, and then added that he didn't know how Zhang Lin was doing. The soldier tells the main character that it is very dangerous outside now, and there is no need to wander around here. Tianjian replies that he ran out of supplies and so he went out, and then asks what the situation is in the city. The soldier is told on the radio that the zone has been attacked by a group of mutated cats and they are requesting reinforcements. The soldier gets back inside the car and shouts to the main character that if he needs supplies, then he should go to the government supply point. The soldier adds that the city is also unsafe and advises him to return quickly. The main character agrees. A flying propeller plane is visible in the sky. An army helicopter appears above the armored vehicle. The main character thought that even military aircraft were involved and apparently the number of mutated animals was quite large. He put on a serious expression and thought that even though he and Zhang Ling had broken up, in such a situation he couldn't stay away, and would stop by on the way to see how she was doing, since she was not a stranger. The city's multi-story skyscrapers are engulfed in smoke. The main character is driving around the city and hears police conversations. One voice reports that a robbery took place on the avenue. Another voice reports that a woman's body was found in the pond. The main character looks around. He looked at the rearview mirror and saw a police car. A police car drives down the road with the alarm on. The main character thought that now, except for police cars, only ambulances remained on the streets. Ambulance workers put a man who has lost a lot of blood on a stretcher into a car. Another worker says there is another case of lung disease caused by food poisoning. Another worker asks to prepare a dose of adrenaline. Some of the workers say that there are too many patients, and there are almost no cardiotonic drugs left. The patient in the car has a fever and has his mouth wide open. A window glass breaks in the building. A woman approaches her wounded husband, who is sitting on the ground. The girl takes him by the jacket and shouts at him not to fall asleep and that they will now go to the hospital. The guy tells the girl that she should forget and there are no more places there, which is why she won't even get through to the ambulance. The main character thought that it seemed that the current medical system was also paralyzed and, in principle, unable to cope with the consequences of plant irradiation. The main character closes his eyes and exhales. He holds the steering wheel tightly with his hands and wonders if he can protect Li Han in this game. People gather near the supply point. The police report that there is a government supply point for basic necessities and ask that order be maintained. A police officer speaks into a loudspeaker next to his partner and asks people to get in line. There are a lot of products in the boxes. The signs say that rice costs 160 per 500 grams, Vegetables 280 per 500 grams. The policeman asks to remain calm, since there is enough food for everyone, and with an ID card, everyone can buy 2.5 kilograms of rice, 2.5 kilograms of flour, and 500 grams of vegetables. Lots of people talking to each other. A man in a brown shirt points his finger at another man and asks him not to jump in line, since he has been standing for 5 hours and will therefore buy first. The man with brown hair replies that this place was originally his, and he was just going to the toilet. A man in a brown shirt calls him an ill-mannered hillbilly, and then informs him that he is the president of the Zindong company and it is better for him not to cross the road. A woman hugs her little hungry daughter. The main character looks around from the car. One man hits another because they didn't share food. Lots of people shouting at each other. The main character looks ahead and thought that on the left turn was her house. Another car pulls out onto the road in front of him. A man in a sweater gets out of this car. He is holding a bag in his hands and has glasses and a black cap on his head. He knocks on the window of the protagonist's car and asks from the supply point if he is on his way, and assumes that he was unable to buy food. The man shows the groceries in the bag and says that he has everything he wants. The main character looks at the food with a calm expression on his face. He noticed dark particles around the food. He says with a smile on his face that if he can eat any of this in front of him, he will buy everything. The man with glasses asks what the main character means and doesn't he really believe him. He grabs the glass of the main character's car and tells him that if he didn't feel sorry for the main character, he wouldn't be able to buy anything. The main character asks him to get out of the way. The man screams and asks the main character how he is talking to him. Tianjan looks at the man with glasses gloomily. He takes out a gun and is assessed as a man. The man is scared and invites the main character to talk. The main character with a serious expression on his face says that if he shoots such a vile merchant like him, then no one will say a word to him. 2 drops of sweat run down the merchant's cheek. He clutches the package to himself and moves away. He opens the door of his car and says that he was unlucky to stumble upon such a person. He gets into his car and drives away. The main character drove on in his car. He enters the entrance of one of the residential buildings. He goes up the stairs. He knocks on the door of one of the apartments, calling the name Zhang Ling. The main character asks her if she is at home, and then lifts the carpet and takes out a key from under it. He opens the door to the room and calls the girl's name. Inside, things were scattered on the floor and the main character thought that this couldn't happen because she was a clean person. The girl's bed is not made, the blanket is crumpled. He sees the medicine among the books. The main character notices that there are contaminated fruits and medicine here. He takes a package of medicine called moxifloxacin and notes that it is an antibiotic from Tianjin and adds that the reputation of this pharmaceutical company is simply disgusting. He examines the packaging and thought that there were no traces of blood in the room and hoped that she had not eaten poisoned food. He looks at the photograph of him and the girl. The main character looks at the mess on the bed and notices that there were no signs of forced entry on the lock and it's all too suspicious. He looks at the packaging of the medicine and asks where she could go in the middle of all this chaos. In-game notifications appear. Rank, guest house with a level 1 bonus skill. Eye of Truth. All objects and living beings will be displayed digitally by the owner. Near a small house there are huge fields. Powers in the first level shelter. Remote control of the shelter. Even if the player has left the shelter, he can at any time learn about the status of all products from the store in real time, and can also control them. Area 30 mu can be used for fishing and herding, planting and construction. Status of income and expenses, losses. A dilapidated level 1 greenhouse is located in the middle of lifeless land. The main character thought that when he received enough points, he would be able to improve the facilities on the farm, but this would not affect the level of protection from radiation. He hits the ground with his hoe. Tianjan leans on a hoe and wipes his face with a rag. Li Han exclaims that those seeds really sprouted. Xiao Hai looks at the small green sprout, and the sister asks her brother to look quickly. The main character approaches the girl and the dog. There are many sprouts on the ground, which are tomatoes with a ripening period of 48. The main character thought that the radiation-resistant seeds fully correspond to the description from the system. He notes with a smile on his face that they ripen quickly. He adds that as long as they have points, he and his sister will definitely be able to survive in this world. Li Han looks at the plants with enthusiasm and says that all the seeds they planted before did not grow, and she thought that they would have nothing to eat. She adds that her brother is the best because he was able to get such seeds. The main character with a hoe on his shoulder says that of course and asks if she remembered the rules that the main character spoke about. The girl laughs and asks not to underestimate her. He raises his index finger up and says that you should only eat the food that your brother gives you. She raises another finger and says that you can't run outside the farm without your brother's permission. And you also need to hide from animals that behave strangely and keep an eye on Zio-Hai so that he doesn't eat anything. A system notification appears indicating that radiation-resistant products are ripe and it is recommended to collect them as soon as possible. The tomato branches bore fruit. The system reports that radiation-resistant tomatoes are rich in nutrients and long-term consumption may improve fitness. Shelf life, 30 days. The main character takes one tomato and examines it. He bites a tomato and thinks that it really improves his physical shape. Blue streams of energy emanate from him and he thought that heat was spreading throughout his body, and the fatigue from work over the past few days had disappeared. He adds that in a world where there is an acute shortage of food, he not only has food, but also bonuses to his characteristics, which forces him to fully engage in farming. In this system, expanding powers, buying products, increasing the level of shelter, everything depends on points, and the opening of different functions is valued with different numbers of points. A light glow emanates from a blue ball with patterns. The only source of points is the exchange system. Berries and meat are replaced with blue crystals. The exchange system mainly uses agricultural products, livestock products, and minerals, and in addition, the price differs depending on the level. According to the chart, there are super boosting foods, divine boosting foods, healing foods, and anti-radiation foods. 1 kilogram of anti-radiation products is equal to 1 point. 1 kilogram of healing products is equal to 100 points. 1 kilogram of divine enhancement products is equal to 1,000 points. And 1 kilogram of super enhancing products is equal to 100,000 points. There is a tree in the background and jars of seeds and plants in the foreground. You don't need to worry about supplies, life, delivery, and if you have enough points, you can turn your estate into the best military base in a short time. The main character thought that he couldn't wait. He looks at the tomato with a smile and thought that it was just an anti-radiation product from the other 3 levels, and the effect about them could be even more amazing. He turns around and thinks that he will now look at the fruits of the healing level. He made a displeased expression on his face. Tianjian sees some huge carrots in front of him. He thought with a dissatisfied expression that this was a ripening rate of 10%. A notification appears stating that this is a healing carrot with a maturity level of 100%, and with an effect that removes the negative effects of any poisoning and disease, including irreversible damage caused by these effects. The shelf life is unlimited. White particles fly near the carrots. The main character with a smile on his face thought that this was cool, and with this you don't have to worry about illnesses. He rubs his forehead and thinks that he sold 70% of the harvest, exchanging it for points, and left the rest in his backpack as a reserve. The system asks the main character if he is sure that he wants to exchange 200 kilograms of anti-radiation products. He reaches his hand towards the confirmation button. Notifications appear stating that 2,000 points have been received, and 3 healing products have been added to inventory. He again performs operations in the system, obtaining 30 pieces of the anti-radiation product. The system congratulates the player on the successful completion of the first exchange, for which he gives the achievement of Exchange Master with a reward in the form of a robot for intellectual work for agriculture. A robot wearing a hat and green eyes appears in front of him. The main character was surprised that he received a reward for the first exchange and adds that apparently you can get a lot of good things for achievements. Tianjian takes the robot in his hand and thought about how tiny it is and it feels like it is absolutely useless. The robot looks at the main character with displeasure. The main character thought that it seemed to him that the robot was staring at him. The robot jumped away from the protagonist's hand. He makes many lightning strikes around him. The main character thought about how he knows about his thoughts and whether consciousness is connected with the system, and also whether a robot received from the system can directly receive instructions from the head. The robot cut many sheaves of straw with a sharp blade. Tianjian thought that even this robot was so cool, and if he earned points in exchange for a combat robot, then he wouldn't have to worry about his sister's safety. Li Han sits with Zio-Hai in front of the TV. The main character props up his chin and smiles a little, thinking that this is quite possible. The main character calls his sister to go eat and tells her to stop watching cartoons. The dark sun rises above the protagonist's home. The main character brings fried chicken and says that today they have chicken. It is decorated with plants from the farm. Li Han and the dog look at the food, and then the girl asks what kind of chicken it is with a happy face. The main character puts the chicken on the table and says that they will celebrate that the seeds have sprouted. The girl and the dog look at the chicken with appetite. She asks her brother if he said that they need to save some food for later. The main character says that they can grow more and there is still enough left of this harvest. The girl looks at her brother with a happy face. The main character tells the girl that if she shows their food to anyone, he will punish her and not feed her for 3 days. The girl picks up her fork and says that she won't tell anyone. The main character sits down at the table and says to fly in, and then adds that she's probably already tired of noodles in these 2 days. The main character gives a chicken leg to Xiao Hai and says that the first piece is in gratitude to him for protecting them. Li Han hugs the dog and says that he is the coolest one. She looked down and asked how Xiao Bai was doing. The main character made a serious expression on his face. He strokes his sister and tells her not to worry, because he was just seriously injured and therefore cannot go out to her yet, and when he recovers, he will definitely come to play with her. The main character closed his eyes and said that therefore she should under no circumstances go to the attic so as not to interfere with his rest. The main character stands in front of the cage with Xiao Bai. He stands behind bars and growls with an angry face. The main character noticed something. A notification appears that someone is trying to break into the shelter. The main character thought about access to surveillance, and the girl and the dog look at the main character with misunderstanding. A notification appears that an appearance scan is taking place and reveals that this is an unarmed 42-year-old man with a threat level of 3. He observes the man in the hat and calls him Uncle Nan, and then wonders what he is doing here. Nan holds a cigarette in his hand, and the main character asks him what happened. The uncle throws the cigarette on the floor and calls the name of the main character. He grabs the bars and says that he wanted to ask him for something. He breathes heavily and asks the main character if he accidentally has extra food and adds that he really has no choice, because his house was robbed and his food was stolen, and in the city food is too expensive. He looked down and asked the main character if he could share some food with him. The main character looks at his uncle in surprise. He closes his eyes and apologizes to his uncle, and then says that he also has no supplies and everything he grew was contaminated. Uncle has a worried expression on his face. Dan touches his temple and says that he visited many relatives and no one had extra food to lend him and calls himself shameless. The main character exhales and says that he can give a very small ration in gratitude for his care in the past. Uncle Nan smiles and thanks the main character. Xianjian says that the only thing he can share is instant noodles, and then tells his uncle that he can calm down and then think about what to do next. The uncle agrees and again thanks the main character, who wishes him good luck. Uncle holds the package in his hands and says no, and wishes good luck to both of them. The main character crossed his arms and thought that this food would be enough for him to last only 3-5 days, and adds that although he has enough food, in this collapsed world someone else's soul is in the dark. He needs to learn to hide his feelings, and ordinary vegetables from the freezer are for him, they are no longer needed either, and at night I will have to quietly give them to him. Li Han cries and tells his brother that he wants to see the little spirit's house. The main character says that there are still mutated animals in the vicinity of the farm and he is not comfortable leaving it alone. The girl asks the main character where they are going, and he replies that to Uncle Nan, who often used to come to help them on the farm, and so they are bringing him some food. The girl holds a bag in her hands and says that she remembered her hardworking uncle and adds that he also had a brother at home who often gave her candy. The main character asks if he said that you can eat no more than 1 candy a day. The girl with a worried expression on her face says that he did not give her candy secretly and she was mistaken. A car drives along the road among residential buildings. The main character notices that it is quiet here and even the dogs don't bark. He looks around. He thought that he was afraid that all the cattle had mutated and people got rid of them. There are many cracks on the stone fences, and the protagonist's car drives near one of them. Brother and sister get out of the car with bags, and the girl says that here are more snacks from Li Han. The uncle screams for his son. The main character made a surprised expression on his face. From the apartment building, uncle shouts at Xiao Tian not to scare dad. The main character wonders what it is. The man puts his hand to his face and coughs up blood. Uncle Nan cries and holding his son asks if he doesn't feel better and why it started again. There is a large pool of Xiao Tian's blood on the ground. The uncle's son coughs up blood again, and the main character watches what is happening. Tianjian wonders what's wrong with him with a worried look on his face. Li Han whispers to his brother that his uncle's son spat out so much blood and is he really dying. The main character tells the girl that everything is fine and asks her not to look. He remembers a man who was taken away in an ambulance and thought that the symptoms were the same as people who ate irradiated vegetables and asks if that food ran out so quickly. A bead of sweat runs down his face. The main character with a surprised look remembered about the healing carrots and thought, "Isn't this an excellent test subject?" and wonders if he can survive, and now they will look at the effect. The uncle sat his son on a chair and tells him to go to bed quickly, and then adds that these quack doctors say that there are no beds in the hospital and that it is incurable, even if there were beds. Xiao Tian begins to cry with a desperate expression. The uncle, with tears in his eyes, asks what he should do. The uncle's son rolls his eyes. A paper bundle breaks the window. The uncle looks at it. A bundle tied with a rope falls to the ground. A large hole remains in the window. Nan looks out the window and shouts, asking what kind of scoundrel threw it, and asks him to come here. The dying son points his finger at the bundle and asks his uncle to look there, but he asks his son not to move. The uncle unwraps the package and sees a lot of fresh vegetables. With extreme surprise, he tells his son that these are fresh vegetables. The main character holds his sister in his hands. Uncle discovers a small piece of paper among the vegetables. There was a carrot in the paper and it said that you need to give it to him so that he doesn't die. The uncle holds a carrot and paper in his hand and calls the author of the letter sick, and then adds that they cannot cure him in the hospital, but he gives him some kind of carrot. Xiao Tian looks at Nan, who calls himself a useless father, with a painful expression. Xiao Tian's eyes roll again. His eyes close as he looks at his crying father. He calls his father several times, and he removes his hands from his head. He holds his father's hand and says that he wants to try, because if he just lies there he will die anyway. But he wants to live. The father, with tears in his eyes, stops crying. He wipes away his tears and agrees with his son, and then says that anyway the hospital won't cure him and he shouldn't watch him die in his arms. He brings the carrot to his son's mouth and tells his son to bite quickly. Xiao Tian eats the carrots that the main character handed over. Xiao Tian screams loudly after eating carrots. Nan screams for her son. The son gets out of bed and coughs blood. He lowered his gaze and continued to cough up blood. He opens his eyes and his skin color becomes healthy. Uncle Nan made a happy expression on his face. The uncle's house is backdropped by a beautiful night sky. The uncle says it's good that his son is feeling better. The main character made a joyful expression on his face. Streams of electricity emanate from a street lamp. The street lamp illuminates the street again. The main character looks at the lantern and says that the electricity has been restored, which means the signal should also be received. He calls his girlfriend Zhang Lin from his smartphone. He puts his smartphone to his ear and hears a beep. The answering machine reports that the called subscriber is temporarily unavailable and asks you to call back later. The phone in the girl's pocket plays a ringtone. The man in the passenger seat asks why it's so noisy and whose phone is ringing. A man in a green jacket turns on his phone and says that there is a connection. The driver says that it's the girl behind him and asks the guy in the sweater to turn off the phone. The guy in the green jacket asks how much food they can get after it is delivered. The fat driver replies that at least for several months. The driver asks the guy what he thinks they need these people for. The guy in the green jacket answers, "What difference does it make?" and adds that let him do his job in silence. Their car heads to the Tianjin Pharmaceutical Company building. The main character and his sister are driving near the trees. The girl calls the main character cool. She spread her arms to the sides and said that she saw Xiao Tian spit out so much blood, but after eating the carrot, he immediately recovered. She says with a happy expression that he was gray and then became normal, and then adds that it was so cool. The main character looks at his sister and thought that she loves cartoons too much and behaves like a character from them. The dark silhouette quickly jumps near the car. The car shakes due to the impact on the roof. The main character clenches his teeth, and the girl closes her eyes. A drop runs down the main character's cheek and thinks about what is happening on the roof. A dark hand with claws rests on the roof of the car. The main character sees dark paws and red eyes on the front window of the car. The mad monkey opens its mouth with sharp teeth. The main character turns the steering wheel and tells his sister to hold on tight. The girl agrees and holds onto the belt. The main character turns the car to a place where there is no fence. The evil monkey attacks the main character but misses him. Tianjian takes out a gun from his pocket while his sister holds her head. The guy shoots at the animal but hits the roof of the car. The monkey jumped onto the hood of the car. The main character clenched his teeth and held the steering wheel tightly with a menacing look. The monkey slid onto the front of the car. The main character covers his sister with his hand. The car hits a tree, trapping the monkey between them. The main character aims at the animal from the car window. He takes a shot straight to the head and hits it successfully. He gets out of the car and looks at the defeated monster. He sees that the number 05 is painted on the monkey's shoulder. The main character takes a closer look at the number and wonders where it came from here, because there are no nurseries or zoos in the area. He He thought about it and remembered that there was only Tianjin Pharmaceutical Company nearby. The large company building rises above the forest. Blue streams of energy are visible in the sky. White particles are flying in the air near the building. Lightning strikes near the main character's house. The main character turns to his sister and tells her to watch cartoons since he still has things to do. He opens the door to Xiao Bai's room. He approaches the dog in the cage and sits down next to him. The dog looks at the main character with an angry look. He holds one hand over the other with gloves on them and exhales. A system notification appears asking whether to get the healing carrots, and the main character agrees. He holds the dog's face and puts carrots in his mouth. He thought that these carrots could even cure poisoning from irradiated vegetables and would certainly be able to make the dog the same again. The main character closes the mouth of a dog with a carrot inside. With anxiety on his face, he wishes for the dog to become the same. Xiao Bai growls at the main character. It opens its mouth with sharp teeth. Li Han looks at the main character with concern on his face. Another lightning strikes outside. The girl gets up from her seat, and Xiao Hai looks at her in surprise. She thought that the thunder was too strong and she was a little scared, and then wondered why her brother had not returned yet. She runs to her brother and thinks that she must find him. She looks at the main character from around the corner and thinks to scare him. She secretly approaches Tianjan from behind. She screams and touches the main character's back. The main character turns sharply, and the girl laughs. She notices that the main character was scared and does not have time to finish talking about what she did this time. Her gaze becomes very gloomy. She looks at Xiao Bai, who is lying in blood. She loses consciousness, and the main character prepares to catch her. He catches his sister and tells her to come to her senses. She cries and asks her brother why he did this, and then asks him to quickly give him a healing carrot. The main character hugs his sister and says that carrots cannot save mutated organisms, and the girl cries even more and says that she does not want Xiao Bai to die. The girl cries even harder in the arms of the main character. The main character and his sister stand at Xiao Bai's grave. The main character has a slightly sad expression on his face, and the girl lowered her gaze. The main character takes his sister by the hand. There is a ball and a bone at the dog's grave. Tianjan says that it is getting colder and they need to go back. He calls his sister to go eat and notices that he has her favorite food. Li Han sits silently on a pillow in front of the TV. She does not react in any way to the words of the main character. The main character exhales with his eyes closed and places a dish on the table. He tells Xiao Hai to stay here with Li Han, after which the dog barks. Notifications appear that anti-radiation crops are ripe and need to be harvested as soon as possible. The main character uses the game interface. The main character is sitting on the hay not far from the greenhouse. According to the notifications, the harvest has been completed and 500 kilograms of anti-radiation crops have been received. A small robot with a rake jumps onto the main character's shoulder. The main character exchanges points using the system. Blue particles appear around the dilapidated greenhouse. The greenhouse is starting to look like new and is now called a regular level 2 greenhouse. An exclamation point and a triangle appears above the main character, and a notification appears stating that the protection level of the shelter is 3, and it can only protect against the invasion of small wild animals. Further, it is written that the level of risk is extremely high, and it is recommended to create a protection system as soon as possible. The main character crossed his arms and thought that it was true that it was worth increasing the level of security of the farm, because with the level of crops that he is currently growing, he cannot earn many points, but this issue can be postponed for now. The main character spends 1,000 points, and as a result, the strengthening of the fence increases from level 1 to 2. Blue particles appear at the fence, after which it is transformed. A live wire appears above the stone fence for 500 points. A cloud of smoke appears, inside of which there is one mobile radar, which looks like a small round robot with 2 legs. The main character looks out the system window and thought that he doesn't have enough points, but he needs to get a robot protector for Li Han. He made a surprised expression on his face. He looks at the robot protector in the store and discovers that it costs 35 points, which he lacks. With a serious expression on his face, he thought that if he sold the food supplies from the warehouse, there should be enough, and then he added that if there are no points, then he just needs to earn more and wait for someone else to take it. He scrolls through the store's assortment in the interface. A notification appears about the purchase of Hummingbird, a level 1 combat model, whose characteristics are as follows: Projectiles 100 out of 100, damage level 0 out of 100, speed is 5, attack power is 3, defense is 1, and its attack method is shot. Robotic hummingbirds and dogs materialize. An interface window appears with the characteristics of the Hound, a level 2 combat model. She has 50 out of 50 projectiles, fuel 100 out of 100, speed is 4, attack power is 6, defense is 5, and her attack methods are erosion, shot, bite. Leaves are falling from a tall tree. The main character mentally commands the hummingbird to knock down the falling leaves. The hummingbird near the main character instantly fires 3 shots. The leaves that the robot was shooting at were cut, and the main character, with a smile on his face, thought that the bird was accurate. The bird's eyes glow blue. The main character thought that air patrols and sniper shots were available. The main character next to the dog points to a stone and commands it to blow it up. The laser barrel begins to glow in the dog's mouth. The dog's laser fires a powerful blue laser shot, after which the stone is destroyed. Shards of stone fly near the main character, after which he smiles. He thought that now he was calm about Li-Han. The girl watches TV silently. The Hound approaches the main character's sister. The robot looks at the girl with its glowing blue eyes. The main character pets the dog and tells his sister to let the Hound protect her. He smiles and asks Li-Han to choose a name and suggests Zio Bai. The girl hugs the robot and looks like she's about to cry. She agrees with the protagonist's proposal. The Tianjin pharmaceutical company building towers above other high-rise buildings. The voice reports that the out-of-control samples have been eliminated. A man in a black shirt with a tablet says that only indicators number 7 are growing steadily, and now he can easily bite through a plate 5 millimeters thick. The man in a jacket stands against a glass wall and asks what about another question. The man in the shirt says that the vice president of Gen is very unhappy that they did not donate medical equipment, and if she finds out and reports to the head office, then they will be in trouble. The man in the jacket turns the chair. He sits down on it and rests his chin on his hand. His name is Lian Tianyu and he is the president of Tianjin Pharmaceutical Company. He, with a cigar in his hand, says that she is just a stupid girl with little connections and besides, everything is kept secret and even if she wants to check, she needs to know where to start. A man in a white shirt wants to say something about the head office, but he is interrupted. Lian Tianyu with a smile on his face tells the guy that he should let Cheng Nan keep an eye on Gen Zio, and orders them not to let her ruin his plans. The president turns in his chair towards the wall. He smiles and says that perhaps a great fortune awaits him. A girl with black hair walks down the corridor and asks where Lian Tianyu is, followed by a girl with brown hair who apologizes and tells Vice President Jen that President Lian is not in place right now, and then adds that President Jen is putting them in a difficult position. The Vice President opens the door to his office. With a slightly furious expression on her face, she calls Lian Tianyu stupid and asks what he is thinking about, because the medical system of the entire southern city is paralyzed and he, as a representative of the medical field, should now cooperate with hospitals with all his might, donate equipment and drugs to them, and not engage in any experiments on animals. Lian Tianyu turns in his chair to the girl and says that this is the office of the president of the company, and it's not entirely appropriate to burst in here like that. He lowers his gaze and says that he is an entrepreneur, and the goal of an entrepreneur is to benefit from any situation, and he does not think that modern medicine can do anything in the current circumstances. The girl stands opposite the president and asks what he is talking about, and the president tells the girl that she is also a shareholder of the company and receives dividends. He invites her to imagine what kind of reward they will receive if they can come up with a way to solve the problem. The girl smiles and asks if this means that President Lian has made progress in his research. The girl's crystal amulet glows blue and she says that even the Yanhuang federal government could not provide information about an effective medicine, and in this case she should take a walk to the laboratory. The man smiles and asks if it is possible to do this so quickly and adds that if Vice President Jen cooperated more and provided workers for this project, progress would have been much faster. The girl looks at Lian Tianyu with a calm look and says that she will come into the laboratory later to understand where they stopped, because she will only be able to cooperate if she checks how the work is going. The president replies that they are always happy to see her and will send a person to her who will bring them up to date. A man in a gray jacket follows the girl and says that the technical group reported that she was in the office for too little time and it was not enough for a full scan. but the entrance to the secret laboratory is most likely located in the office. The woman crosses her arms and calls the president an old fox. They walk further down the corridor and the girl asks if they recruited those captured experimenters. The man in the gray jacket looks down and says that they close their eyes every time they enter, but they received a pass. The girl put her finger to her chin and said it was very good. The man hands the vice president his pass. Jen Zhao raises the pass up and thought that if not here, then where else could she be, if the most dangerous place should be the safest. The girl and the scientist walk through the laboratory. The scientist says that his name is Tu Zhai and today he will accompany her and tell her about the research. The girl says that first they will look at the progress of the experimental subjects, after which the scientist asks to follow him. The scientist took the girl to a capsule with a furry monster with pointy ears and says that test subject number 7 is the only one of the test subjects who did not go crazy and his strength increased 10 times. He adds that while he won't become as bloodthirsty and insane as the failed examples, he is still unstable and somewhat aggressive. A man with gray hair runs up to them and says that something bad has happened. He whispers something in Tu Zhai's ear, causing him to now have a worried expression on his face. The girl looks at them with a smile on her face. The gray-haired man says that they really have no choice and asks them to come and have a look quickly. Tu Zhai asks how this could happen. He folds his hands and with a smile on his face tells the girl that he is very sorry, but there is an emergency situation, so he will not be able to accompany her further and will ask his colleague to replace him. The girl replies that it's okay, because this is just a work task, and she herself looks a little here and will leave. The scientist replies that he is afraid that this does not comply with the rules, but the girl interrupts him and says that this area is completely under video surveillance, and then asks what they are worried about. The scientist is called again, and the girl tells him to go quickly since the matter is urgent. Tu Zhai agrees with her and says that they will continuously monitor her, after which they leave the girl alone at the capsule. Jen Zhao presses a button on his earphone. She says to start, after which the guy in the cap behind the laptop agrees with her. The guy types on the keyboard, after which a notification appears on the screen that the surveillance system is covered. The guy says it's ready, and the girl, looking at the capsule, asks him to look for a hidden entrance. The guy in the cap says it's in the corner on the northeast side. He reports that there is a cavity in the wall and may need to press on it, and also she has 30 minutes. The girl presses on the cavity in the wall. Part of the wall rises up and Jen Zhao gains access to the panel with the screen. Next to her, double automatic doors open. She looks with a surprised look at what is inside. The guy asks what's inside. The girl looks around and sees people in the capsules, and then says that everything is worse than she expected. The guy in the cap asks if we need to request support from the head office. The girl asks the guy to wait for her. A bead of sweat runs down her left cheek. In front of her in the capsule is a woman with a lower body like a fish. On the paper attached to the capsule it is written that the object is called Zhonglin 51. Jen Zhao calls the president a scoundrel. A notification appears indicating that the anti-radiation corn is ripe. Li Han, wearing a straw hat, looks at the many ears of corn that have grown. Her facial expression looks happy. The main character calls his sister and tells her to help him quickly, because the faster they finish, the faster they will go to eat. The girl takes one corn out of her basket of cobs and tells her brother that she wants it roasted. Tianjian, wearing a white bandana on her head, laughs and asks if she really got hungry so quickly. The girl with a sad expression on her face says that she is so hungry that she has no strength to collect corn. The main character with a hoe on his shoulder tells the girl to bring him dry firewood and adds that he will fry her corn in oil. The girl arranged and runs to the main character. The main character and Li Han are sitting by the fire with corn. The main character's sister asks what she should do if she continues to eat so much and becomes a fat pig. The main character looks at her and thought that she really has been eating even more than him lately and adds that these are special plants that improve their physical fitness, and as the body grows, it needs more and more nutrients. There are sauces and oil on the corn. The main character tells the girl that since she is growing, she won't get fat if she eats a little more. The main character looks at the characteristics of his sister. Age is 6, strength is 10, intelligence is 11, speed is 11, and endurance is 11 out of 11. The girl eats corn with a happy expression on her face and agrees with the words of the main character. He thought that they had been eating anti-radiation vegetables for a few days, and his and Li Han's characteristics had increased noticeably. He wondered if she would become like a bodybuilder if she continued like this. He imagined his sister with huge muscles. The main character smiles and thought why he was making this up. The girl eats and says that the fried corn is so delicious. The main character holds another corn in his hand and says that he will fry her another one with spices. He thought that with such a shelter, even if Lee Han's appetite continued to grow, he would simply grow more food. A notification appears when the visitor arrives. The main character took a bite of corn and thought who was visiting him at this time. He sees Xiao Tian at the gate and wondered if this was the food he gave them. The main character approaches the farm gate. He takes off his bandana and asks Xiao Tian what's wrong. The guy with a smile on his face says the name of the main character. He holds a package in his hands and tells the main character that 2 days ago he gave them instant noodles and his father told him that he needed to thank him. He adds that as soon as they had food, he brought it to him. The main character laughs a little and says that's it, and then he thought that this is the food that he gave them, but this means that he didn't help them in vain. The main character with a smile on his face asks Xiao Tian where he got this food. The guy with a smile on his face puts his hand on the back of his head and says that, to be honest, they found it in the yard of their house, and adds that maybe some relative or just a kind person left it for them. He sheepishly asks if he can ask for a favor. The main character asks him to speak. The guy wrinkles his jacket and says that he heard that a new supply point has opened in the suburb of Nanchang, and there is still a lot of stock there. He adds that he wanted to borrow the main character's car to go shopping. The main character smiles and allows the guy to take the car. Xiao Tian, with concern on his face, says that he never passed his license, and that point is located in some kind of wilderness. He throws up his hands and says that the path there is not close. The main character thought that he needed a car with a driver. Xiao Tian says that he won't keep him for long. The main character is holding the package and thought that he planned to go to the supply point again a couple of days ago to reconnoiter the situation, but business at the farm was delayed. He adds that he was warned just in time and he will just drop him off. Tianjian remembers the blue beam of the hound, and then thought that there is a mechanical guard at home, so he is also calm about Li Han, because with the power of Xiao Bai, one cannot be afraid, even if a group of enemies sneaks in. The main character agrees and says that they are still old friends, but he needs to return before noon to feed Li Han. Xiao Tian made a happy expression. The main character asks the guy to wait for him here while he drives the car. He goes to the car and puts on a sweater, and then tells his sister to be a good girl and not go out or open it to anyone until he gets back. The girl agrees with the main character. Li Han gives a thumbs up and tells his brother not to worry because Da Bai is very strong. The main character asks when he became Da Bai. The girl crossed her arms and said that because it was an improved version and she had already tested it, and it cracked a huge stone like a nut. The main character asks for Da Bai only if he really needs it, otherwise it could be dangerous. The girl agrees and says that you can't just blow up stones. The main character puts his hand on the girl's head and says that he and Xiao Tian will bring her something tasty. Li Han asks if Xiao Tian is also here and says that he wants to say hello to him. The main character takes the girl by the cheek and asks where she is and says that you can't go anywhere with Da Bai and show it to strangers. The girl screams and answers that she knows, because she is already 6 years old and she is not a small child. But at home she doesn't even have anyone to talk to except her brother, so she is bored. The main character says okay. They leave the farm through the gate. Li Han looks at Xiao Tian from the car window with a happy expression. The girl wants to ask him something. The main character interrupts her by grabbing her by the hair. The main character asks her to get out and let Xiao Tian sit down, because the sooner he leaves, the sooner he will return and cook her something to eat. The girl put her hands on her belt and is indignant because she did not finish. She runs back to the farm and says that she will go watch cartoons. A car drives along the road near the trees. The main character, with concern on his face, thought what a devil his sister was and he knew that her mouth wouldn't close. Xiao Tian rests his chin on his hand. They drive past dead trees. A black-haired guy with a thoughtful look asks the main character if it's okay to leave Li Han alone at home, because now there is complete chaos all around, and what if some scoundrel gets into the farm? The main character with a smile on his face says that he is an ordinary farmer, and he has neither money nor food and who would need to break into their house. Xiao Tian asks the main character if he left her something for self-defense. Tiang Zhan replies that she is only 7 years old and will not be able to use it. The main character looks at the guy and says that he installed electricity to the farm gate, and therefore no one will be able to enter, so don't worry. Xiao Tian smiles, laughs, and then says that he is calm then. They drive in silence for a while. The black-haired guy takes out his phone and types something on it. The main character pays attention to how his passenger uses the phone. A drop of sweat runs down Xiao Tian's face and he notices that the main character looked at him. He puts the phone in his pocket and laughs, and then says that he is afraid that he might not have enough money, and that's why he asked a friend for it. The main character looks at him with a cold gaze. Lee Han raises his hand up and shouts, "Rainbow Squad, attack." The yellow lemon turned golden. Xiao Hai stands next to her. The girl spread her arms to the sides and said that Xiao Tian also knows how to change color. The girl holds the dog by the muzzle and asks if Xiao Tian is also a member of the Rainbow Squad. Her face looks inspired. He says in a raised tone that when he and his brother saw him last time, he was green, but this time he turned red. She adds that it's so cool. Xiao Tian's silhouette looks red in the girl's eyes. The main character hands over a bundle of money to Xiao Tian. The guy is surprised by what he sees and a drop of sweat runs down his cheek. His face is covered in shadow. The main character says that he doesn't have much money, but asks to take it. Xiao Tian throws up his hands and refuses the money, and then tells the main character that he already helped them a lot and how can he also take the money. The main character extended his hand with money to Xiao Tian's torso and tells him to take it. He says that's enough talk because he needs to watch the road. The black-haired guy squeezes the package and says that he will repay the main character for his help. They are driving along a winding road and the navigator in their smartphone informs them that they need to go straight for 500 meters. The main character and Xiao Tian are watching the road, and the navigator reports that after 300 meters you need to turn right. The black-haired boy clenched his teeth and made a worried expression on his face. The navigator informs you that after 100 meters you need to turn right. Xiao Tian grabs the steering wheel of the car with his hand. Xiao Tian with a fake smile on his face says that he thinks that the road on the right is blocked. A bead of sweat runs down his right cheek, and then he suggests driving around to the left. The main character made a suspicious expression on his face. The protagonist's car stops in the middle of the road. Tianjian hits the stand next to him with his hand. He says with disbelief on his face that he often travels along this road and it is the main road in the village, and it can only be blocked by a major natural disaster. He asks the guy how he found out about this, to which he replies that his friend told him about it. The main character with a gloomy look asks what kind of friend he is and asks to call him. Xiao Tian asks the main character why he is asking this and adds that it will not harm him and therefore they need to turn now, otherwise they will be late. He trembles and asks you to believe him this time. The main character clenched his teeth and made an angry look. He turns the steering wheel to the side, turning the car. The car turns onto the left road. A red dot moves on the radar. Someone hits the radar with their fist when they see that the point is driving on a different road. The man with an angry expression on his face says that he knew that something would happen. The man in the driver's seat with glasses says that this fool dared to deceive them. Another guy with glasses in the back seat asks Brother Cheng what they will do now. Cheng gritted his teeth and said it was good that he was prepared for this. He tells the others to remember where the target went as they must stop them and adds that President Lion said that they were needed alive. Their white car is driving along the road. Cheng orders him to be pinned down and blocked in front and behind along with the second group and adds that they will see if they can fly away from them. The main character screams and asks Xiao Tian to explain to him what is happening. The black-haired guy grabs his head and asks him to forgive him, and then adds that it was he who betrayed him. He cries and says that he had no choice since they captured his father. Tianjian asks the guy to calm down and asks what they want. Xiao Tian says that these are people from Tianjin and they found out that the main character has a cure for the infection, and forced him to lure the main character out of the farm, and while he is away, they will capture Li Han to blackmail him. The main character made a shocked expression on his face. His eyes are red with anger and he shouts that she is only 6 years old and okay, but they are kidnapping a 6-year-old child. Xiao Tian replies that he didn't know that they would threaten his father's life and he had no choice. The main character pays attention to something in the car window. He sees a car behind them. Xiao Tian shouts that they have caught up with them, and the main character asks him to shut up. Tianjian with an angry expression tells Xian Tian what that means, so he asked for all this information earlier to find out the situation on the farm for them. The main character looks with one eye at his passenger. Li Han sits on a pillow with a satisfied expression and eats chips, and Xiao Hai sits next to her. Tianjian adds that this is why he took out his phone to give them this information. The girl sees that the dog is paying attention to something and asks Xiao Hai what he is doing. Many armed men with an excavator stand near the walls of the farm. Xiao Tian says that he is to blame for the main character and asks him to just give them the medicine, and then adds that there are too many of them, and they cannot escape. The main character tells the guy that he is very disappointed and he didn't want to be cruel, but they went to Li Han. Xiao Tian cries and apologizes, and then says that he regretted it even when they took his father, but there is no turning back for him. He adds that they will soon catch up with them and the main character needs to give them the medicine. The main character firmly grasps the steering wheel and tells the guy that he will deal with him later. The main character, with a menacing expression on his face, grabbed the steering wheel so tightly that cracks appeared on it, after which he says that they should blame themselves and don't even dream of leaving the farm alive. Dan tells his son that he finally came to his senses and how much he scared him. His son says he is alive. Father and son are sitting on the bed. The father calls his son stupid and asks why he ate something unknown. Dan replies that he was so hungry that he could not stand it any longer and adds that he found an apple in the basement. It did not look contaminated. He adds how careless he is and tells how you can eat food from the basement and they were lying on the ground. The black-haired guy says that they only ate porridge for several days, so he decided to take a risk, otherwise he would have died of hunger anyway. The father pats his son on the back with a joyful expression. Dan holds his son's hand and tells him not to talk nonsense and to borrow food, and then adds that in addition, they were given other products, including a magic medicine that saved him. He adds that this is nothing other than a divine blessing and he was in so much pain that the gods decided to save him, because there are so many corpses of people on the street who ate contaminated vegetables. But he survived and therefore they must later go to worship their ancestors. A drop of sweat runs down Xiao Tian's cheek. Dan says that we need to thank them properly. The black-haired guy with a sad expression on his face thought that if there was a god in the world, he would not have allowed such a catastrophe, and this was left by some person who did not want to reveal his identity. There is a bag filled with vegetables on the floor. The father asks his son if he is hungry. Xiao Tian thought that this person could share so much food. He looks at the bag of vegetables and thought that their family is doomed to hunger and can only provide themselves with basic things to survive. And this is unfair. The father says that they now have food and he will go cook something for his son, but he needs to eat well to recover. Xiao Tian gets up from his seat because he realized something. The father asks his leaving son where he is, and the son replies that he will return soon. The father adds that he has not yet recovered and needs to rest. The son asks his father to leave him alone, and the father wonders what kind of child he has. It's night outside. The lights are on in the apartment building. The man from the house says that he is coming and asks to stop knocking on the door and asks who brought it here. The door is opened by a man with a t-shirt on which it is written that he is an absolute villain. Xiao Tian calls this person Mayo's brother. Mayo, with a wary expression on her face, asks the black-haired guy what happened to him. Xiao Tian says that his house was robbed and he wanted to look at his surveillance footage. Mayo, with a cigarette in his mouth, asks what he is talking about. Xiao Tian points his finger at the camera and says that it needs recording, and then asks if it has a 360-degree view. The guy with the cigarette answers yes. Xiao Tian asks him to let him see because this guy beat him up and he has to catch him. The camera films the street area. Mayo asks the black-haired guy to hurry up as he was about to sleep. Xiao Tian uses a computer and thought that this camera only captured the area at the entrance to their lane. A drop of sweat runs down the guy's cheek and he thinks about who this guy is. The camera footage shows the main character's car. Dan asks his son where he went. Xiao Tian enters the apartment and says that he knows who saved him. He says with a gloomy expression that it is Tian Jan and adds that he just checked the camera footage and the time of his car's appearance and the time he took the medicine coincide. Nan, with a smile on his face, calls the main character a good person and adds that he not only shared food with them, but also saved Xiao Tian's life. The black-haired guy lowered his gaze and remained silent. He opens his mouth and asks his father if he knows that the Tianjin company is now looking for effective medicines for a generous reward. Dan calls his son a scoundrel and asks him what he is up to. Xiao Tian turns his pupils aside and says that he just wants to make their life in this world a little easier, and then asks how long this food will last for them and what they will do when it runs out. Dan tries to say something with a menacing expression on his face, but Xiao Tian interrupts him and asks if he really hopes to ask Tianjan again. Nan hits the guy on the cheek and asks him if this is really his gratitude and adds how he could raise such a scoundrel. He adds that if his son even tries to go there, he will break his legs. Blood flows from Xiao Tian's nose and mouth. He asks his father if he hasn't yet understood the situation they find themselves in and adds that if they want to survive, they must rely only on themselves, and then adds that if they don't take care of themselves, no one will. The main character's car is being chased by a white car. Tianjan thought that their car was too close and it would be impossible to get away. A white car is visible in the rearview mirror. There were two more white cars blocking the road ahead. The protagonist's car stops between white cars. Cheng stands in front of the protagonist's car. A white car approaches the protagonist's car from behind. The main character gets out of his car and holds Xiao Tian by the neck. The black-haired guy raises his hands up. Cheng asks the main character Tian Jian if he is. He smiles and introduces himself as Cheng Han, and then says that he reports to the Tianjin Pharmaceutical Company, and they just wanted to meet the main character, and nothing more. He adds that he knows that the protagonist has a medicine that can cure the infected, so they want to discuss possible cooperation with him, and then says that he will supply them with the medicine, and they make their contribution and receive a profit in the form of huge money. The main character smiles creepily and asks what will happen if he refuses. There are many company agents standing around the main character and Xiao Tian. Cheng Han tells the main character that now there are only two paths before him, and the first is that he voluntarily cooperates with them and they will work harmoniously and earn money happily. Agents approach the main character. One of them takes out a knife. Cheng Han says that the second way is that they will find a way to make him talk. The main character looks around and says that he found the medicine by accident, and there was only one of it and was eventually used on Xiao Tian, and then apologizes that they had to waste so much time. He thought that they did not have pistols and added that they no longer needed Xiao Tian, and if they had pistols, they would have simply killed him. Cheng Nan, with a smartphone in his hand, tells the main character that he seems to have misunderstood something. The guy behind the leader agent is stretching his hands with a smile on his face. Cheng Nan asks his people on the phone at the entrance to the farm if they are already there and asks them to break in, grab that girl, and feed her the contaminated fruit. The leader of the agents with a malicious smile asks the main character if he really thinks that the farm is protected since he installed electricity, and then adds that they sent real specialists there and before going against the Tianjin company, you should think carefully. He asks the main character for cooperation, but something interrupts him and a drop of sweat runs down his cheek. The main character is enveloped in blue streams of energy. He says with a gloomy expression that what he hates most is when he is threatened. Cheng Nan gritted his teeth and wondered how some collective farmer could have such a scary look. The main character looks frighteningly at the leader of the agents and tells him that he should be glad that he didn't go to the farm himself and here he can live a little longer. Cheng Nan smiles with the two agents behind him and asks the protagonist to stop bluffing and adds that if he cooperates with them, then he and the girl will be able to survive. He thought that it was useless for the main character to scare them, considering how many people there were. Tian Jian silently looks at the agent leader. Cheng Nan, with a knife in his hand, asks the main character if he wants to cooperate. He commands his people to grab the main character and do whatever they want with him, leaving the opportunity to speak. After that, he runs with them to Tianjin. Many agents at the fence are painted red. An excavator bucket hits the stone wall of a farm. The girl is watching the agents using the system and looks angry. She shouts that it is very noisy here and asks them if they will let her watch cartoons, and then calls them stupid and adds that she wants to rip their heads off. Many red images of agents stand near an excavator that is destroying a wall. The main character is attacked by 4 armed agents. He hits one of them in the stomach. The agent pushes off and flies far behind Cheng Nan. The leader of the agents gritted his teeth in surprise, and the main character attacked another agent with his fist. The beaten agent lies on the ground, a huge dent in his stomach. Cheng Nan, with a frightened expression on his face, thought that they had found out that there were weapons only on the farm and therefore lured him out of there. One of the agents uses binoculars to observe the farm. He says that something is wrong with the farm and sees through binoculars a stone that is destroyed by a blue laser. He says that the stone was blown up and the distance is too far, but it looks like an explosive weapon, and then commands the others to just lure him out of there and grab him. Cheng Nan thought that he didn't say that this collective farmer was so strong. The main character simultaneously attacks 2 of the 3 agents who attacked him. He smiles and thought that he did not expect that the effect of strengthening the body from anti-radiation plants would be so terrifying. He adds that he has been eating them for the last few days and his stats have increased a little. The game system window shows the characteristics of the main character. His age is 22, strength is 15 with a norm of 10, intelligence is 11 with a norm of 10, speed is 15 with a norm of 10, and endurance is 11 out of 11. He thought that not only strength and speed had increased, but also his skeleton had become stronger, and the reaction speed has increased noticeably. Tian Jian punches one of the agents in the face, breaking his glasses. He turns around and says that in ancient times it was possible to take the path of the sword, the path of the fist, but it turns out he took the path of food. Changnan makes 2 slashes but misses the main character. The main character looks at his enemy with a joyful smile. He thought that first he needed to increase the distance and jumped away from his enemy, and then he thought that the test of characteristics was over and he needed to end the games. He takes out a gun from behind his jacket. He aims his pistol at his enemies. Changnan stands surrounded by his agents and thought that they underestimated him and expected a maximum of a hunting rifle. But this guy was able to get a pistol. The leader of the agents, with concern on his face, tells the main character that he better not anger the one who stands above him and adds that if he touches him, he may not be able to cope with the consequences. He thought that if he could get closer, the gun would be useless. The main character looked thoughtfully and said that for sure, he would still need it, but he needed to get rid of the rest. Tianjan fires his pistol at the agents and hits one of them. Changnan is lying on the floor with a wounded shoulder. He looks towards his agents. 2 agents are defeated by shots from the protagonist's pistol. Changnan held onto his shoulder and thought that he needed to hide in the forest until he used up all the cartridges. The main character shoots towards the leader of the agents. Changnan hid from the shots behind a stone. He listened and thought that the main character had fallen silent and had run out of ammunition. Tianjan stands on a stone and looks through the system window. Changnan gritted his teeth and thought that he was not prepared for the constant interference in the forest and he still had a chance. The main character opens his backpack and puts a gun in the window of the game system. A notification appears indicating that one pistol has been removed from inventory. Changnan looked up and notices the main character. He sees the main character with a pistol and with a frightened expression on his face asks him where he got another pistol. The main character shoots at the agent and hits him. The hummingbird robot attacks one of the agents and hits him. Many other defeated agents lie on the ground. A notification appears that, according to the order of the younger mistress, the last intruder has been destroyed. Li Han watches what is happening with the agents with a dissatisfied expression on his face. A notification appears asking what other instructions the younger mistress will have. A robot dog sits in front of the girl next to the system window. Li Han wonders if her brother sees all this when he returns. Will he think that she is a cruel child and stop loving her? Agents defeated by the robot lie on the ground. The girl shakes her head and thought that her brother shouldn't see this and she needs to clean up the entrance. A hummingbird flies over the agents and the excavator. The bloodied Changnan says that he should not have threatened the child and he is to blame. The main character clenches his fist and the agent begs him to stop torturing him. He lowers his gaze and says that he will say everything, and also asks to leave him. The main character looks like a purple-black monster in his eyes. With an embittered look, he tells him that he will not leave him, but he can make his death quick or he can beat him half to death, cure him and then continue again, because in any case he still has ammunition and time. Changnan asks the protagonist to ask with a desperate expression. Tianjang asks him who his boss is, to which he receives the answer that it is the president of Tianjun, Lion Tianyu. The main character wipes the blood from his chin and says that this is the scoundrel who inflates the prices of medicines, and it is not surprising that he uses such methods, and then asks who else was involved besides him. Changnan says that this project is completely managed by the president, and he keeps all information secret and no one knows about it except them, not even other high-ranking officials of the company, and recently he had a disagreement with the vice president. And he planned to use this project to raise his authority because he wanted to show what he was worth to the head office, and then push the vice president out of the Nanchang branch. The main character made a dissatisfied expression on his face and thought about the head office and adds that Tianjun and Nanchang is a monopoly in the industry, but they are just a subsidiary company. The main character slaps Changnan in the face and tells him to think carefully, and then asks whether Lion Tianyu reported this project to the head office. The agent's boss has a sad expression on his face and says that the vice president seems to have support at the head office, and adds that Lion Tianyu doesn't dare tell them about the project, and if the information leaks out, the vice president will ruin all his plans. The main character with a gloomy expression on his face says that he will ask the last question, and thinks that since the information has not yet been revealed, it will not be difficult to solve the problem. He asks to be taken to Lion Tianyu. The company president's phone vibrates on the desk in his office. Lion Tianyu presses the smartphone to his ear and asks the interlocutor if he completed the task. Changnan replies that the target has already been captured, but he says that he will cooperate only after meeting with him and the old man. The company president calls his subordinate useless trash and adds that he cannot even cope with such a simple task and he has to do everything himself. Lion Tianyu apologizes and says that the main character is too stubborn, and then adds that they have lost several guys. The president agrees and offers to bring him to Warehouse 78, and he will come soon. He throws the phone on the table and says that he still dares to hang up the call. He leaves the office and says that as soon as he gets to the head office, he will immediately replace him. The main character presses the reset button on his smartphone. Xiao Tian, dressed in an agent uniform, thanks the main character. Changnan is tied with a rope and sitting in the front passenger seat, and Tian Jian is holding the steering wheel and says that he is just picking up Uncle Nan on the way, and asks him not to delude himself. 2 white cars and the protagonist's car are left behind, and the main character and his passengers leave in a white car. 2 people head towards the president. The president with his guards and Uncle Nan notice Chief Xiao Tian in disguise and Chengnan. Lion Tianyu holds Nan's head and asks Xiao Tian why he came alone and where Chengnan and that informant are. Xiao Tian holds the boss of the agents and says that the informant lost consciousness and they left him in the car. He adds that brother Chengnan had a stomachache and went big, and so as not to keep him waiting, he sent him. Xiao Tian holds Chengnan, who is wearing the main character's clothes, by the shoulder. The president of the company laughs and says that he is not yet ready to cooperate in such a way, and asks him to just give up, and then adds that the old man is here and he will let him go as soon as he tells everything. Uncle Nan tries to say something, but cannot because his face is covered with tape. He cries and thinks about what he wants to tell Xiao Tian not to say anything, because he will never let them out of here alive. The old man makes loud noises when he tries to say something, and the company president gets very angry and calls Nan stupid and tells him to stop humming. The president kicks him and tells him to calm down. Xiao Tian trembles as he watches this happen. The president asks the guy what he has become and asks him to take him here. 2 guards beat Nan with a go-go. The main character kicks the president of the company. He jumped on him, breaking the glass on the roof. The guards turn their heads and look at what is happening in surprise. The main character smiles, aims a pistol at the president of the company and says that this wall is so inconvenient to climb. The guards call for the boss, and the main character aims at him and tells them not to move. The boss asks his guards not to approach. Lion Tianyu looks at the main character, and then asks where Chengnan is and did he really sell him, and then adds let him only dare to touch him. The main character with an embittered look asks the president of the company how he became the main Tianjun with such intelligence and is it really all he is capable of is ingratitude. The main character says where his subordinate is, after which the company president looks in that direction. He sees a beaten Chengnan, who is wearing the main character's clothes. Lion Tianyu, with a frightened expression on his face, calls the main character stupid and says that if he dares to touch him, the old man will die. Tianjian smiles and says that it is better to kill Lion Tianyu than to kill a person who knows nothing. Xiao Tian asks the main character to stop. 2 guards call their boss. The boss commands to kill the old man who lies behind the guards. The main character pulls the trigger of a gun. He fires at the 2 guards, hitting them twice. Xiao Tian runs to his father, and the main character tells him how stupid he is. The main character shoots Lion Tianyu in the head. A huge bloody stain spreads from the murdered president. Dan and his son bow to the main character. Xian Tian apologizes, and the old man thanks the main character for dealing with everything that his son did and adds that he understands that apologies are useless and thanks again. The main character looks at these 2 and tells Nan that he has nothing to apologize for because he is not to blame for anything. The old man says that it was he who could not stop his own son, so it is also his fault. The main character tells Xiao Tian that he too can stop apologizing if he just wants to feel better. He adds that he is not worthy of forgiveness and the sooner he understands this, the better. Tianjian with a gloomy expression says that he will not touch him just because there is no need for it. Xiao Tian says in a raised tone that they don't know anything and for this the main character can be calm, and then asks what he will do with Chengnan. The agent lies tied up on the ground. The main character says to gather all these people in one pile, and he will go open the car. Nan asks Tianjian what he is going to do with a worried look on his face. The main character with an angry expression on his face says that it is obvious that he will get rid of the corpses. Xiao Tian throws one of the corpses into a pile with the others. He asks his father if the main character is going to burn the corpses. Nan approaches Chengnan and says that he thinks so and adds that they are in the wilderness and this case will not be solved here. Nan drags the leader of the agents by the jacket. Chengnan holds a piece of glass in his hand. He hits the old man, but he dodges. He only brushes Nan's leg. Chengnan smiles and says that the old man evaded after all. Xiao Tian turns and calls his father. The leader of the agents swings a shard of glass in his hand at the old man and says that he is already a dead man anyway, and he will drag at least one to the next world. Xiao Tian stands in front of his father. Chengnan makes a cutting blow to the guy. Nan is shocked by what is happening. The main character hits the leader of the agents with a car. He crashed into the wall with Cheng Nan on the front of the car. Tian Jan gets out of the car and Nan screams loudly while holding his son. Xiao Tian is bleeding on his father's lap. He looks at the main character and tells him that his father is right, that he is a worthless fool and he did not become a good person. But he did not dare to become a bad person. The main character looks at him with a calm expression on his face. The guy adds that because of his greed, he got his father into such a dangerous situation and deserved it. So he pays back his debt and finally feels better. He clutches something in his hand and asks Li Han to thank him. He adds that back then there were probably her candies in the bag of food and it's immediately clear that children love those. The main character holds in his hand the candies that the guy gave him. Xian Tian closes her eyes and says thank you, it was delicious. Nan cries over the loss of her son. He stood up with a piece of glass in his hand. He walks to the car with his face down. He hits Cheng Nan with a piece of glass. The main character and Nan leave the burning building. Zhen Xiao stands at the glass wall and they shout to her that something bad has happened. With a cup of tea in his hand, he asks his subordinate what happened and asks her to calm down and take her time. The subordinate replies that there is news about Lian Tianyu and adds that he is dead. The vice president spills the tea with a surprised expression on his face. She stands in the morgue next to one of the workers and many corpses. She asks if the identities have been established. The morgue worker replies that yes, even though the corpses are seriously damaged. They check the DNA and dental pulps. The worker reads the document and says that these are Lian Tianyu and Cheng Nan, and they did not find the rest in the database and did not declare anyone missing. He adds that currently the police do not have enough resources to conduct an investigation and identify the victims. Zhen Xiao says it doesn't matter and asks if it's a murder or an accident. The worker replies that this is a murder, and the remains of bullets were found in the bodies of the dead, and then adds that the source of the fire is a car and probably after the murder the corpses were put together, and the car was set on fire to get rid of traces. The girl lifts the cloth over one of the corpses. She sees a black, burned body. The morgue worker says that there are also signs of beatings on several bodies. The girl, with a surprised expression on her face, wondered what kind of beast he had crossed the road and who this beast was opposing. Lian Tianyu or the whole company. She looks at the many corpses and thought that if it's the former, then she should celebrate with a bottle of wine in the evening. But if it's the latter, then he's her enemy too. Notifications appear about the successful purchase of the chip bomb. Tian Jan asks Nan if he is sure that he wants revenge. The old man replies that yes, even if it costs him his life. The main character holds in his hand a small bomb with legs. He tells his uncle to take it. He attaches a bomb to the back of Nan's head and says that he has already destroyed all the traces that he could, but he cannot guarantee that some evidence pointing to him will not be found in Tianjin. He says that he warns that he doesn't want the situation like with Xiao Tian to repeat itself, and he certainly doesn't want to have to blow her up. The bomb is activated with a characteristic electronic sound. Dan asks the main character to be calm. The protagonist's car is approaching a farm. Li Han gets scared when the main character calls her from behind. The main character asks her what she is doing. Dan thought that there was something wrong with his eyes, because a mechanical dog was driving an excavator. Arms and legs were sticking out of the sand, and the girl was not afraid of anything. Li Han waves her hands and is happy that the main character is back, and then says that she is not doing anything and is just playing in the sandbox. The girl's eyes are watery and her face is red, and the robot hound sits next to her. The main character tells her that he has already seen everything and asks why she continues to deceive. The girl replies that she was just scared that her brother hates cruel people and suddenly he will leave her. The main character asks what this nonsense is and how he can quit it. The girl with a pitiful expression on her face replies that she killed people. Anne wonders what's going on. The main character puts his hands on his belt and says that no matter what she does, he will be there and help her take responsibility for it. He adds that she has always been and will remain his most important and closest person. The main character puts his palms to his sister's cheeks and says that in fact, he is very glad that she can stand up for herself and she just needs to be herself. He adds that he will guide her and asks her not to worry about it. The main character with a smile on his face says that these bad guys attacked her with bad intentions and she acted cool, and adds that they do not harm other people, but they will not allow themselves to be harmed. Li Han says with a happy face that if anyone dares to offend her brother, she will blow off his head. The main character replies that he will do the same. Han put his finger to his cheek and thought that the world is changing so quickly and he needs to adapt better. The main character asks his sister that she reported that an unpleasant red glow was emanating from these people and therefore ordered them to be shot in the head. The sister clenches her hands into fists and says that they also broke down the door, and then adds that she doesn't like this kind of light because it makes her nervous. The main character sits down and asks the girl if other people have light. She raises her finger up and says that her brother has a relaxing blue color and Xiao Hai has a friendly green color. Nan is surprised by the girl's words. Li Han says that Xiao Tian was also red and Grandpa Nan was gray with a little green, and she also saw passers-by on the street and they were gray. Tian Jan thought that what unites all the people emitting red light is bad intentions towards Li Han. And then in a raised tone he asks the girl if she sees anything else besides different lights from people, such as letters or numbers. The main character assumes that she also became a player. The girl thought about it and said no. The main character asks her when she started seeing these colors. The girl replies that about a week ago. The main character thought that her abilities appeared after the start of the period of destruction. But Li Han does not see the system and therefore she is definitely not a player. The girl, with a dissatisfied expression on her face, thought that her brother was starting to pinch her cheeks again as soon as he thought about something. The main character suggested that this development was probably caused by the consumption of anti-radiation vegetables. The main character smiles scary, and the girl tells him that he is so scary now. The guy replies that he is just very happy. Seeds and food jars fly with the system interface in the background. The main character thought that the effect of the products from the system is different from the side effect of irradiated cultures and the likelihood of mutation is also higher. He adds that he and Li Han have been eating anti-radiation foods for several days, but noticeable changes have already occurred in their bodies and the sister can now see other people's intentions. Electric trails emanate from the girl's eyes. Gray is indifference, green is friendliness, blue is relaxed or close, and red is bad intentions. The main character wondered if this was similar to the level of friendship and, in fact, it was a living indicator of human emotions. The girl thought that her cheeks would swell. The main character thought that his ability was called the Eye of Truth, and why shouldn't Li Han's ability be called the Eye of Good and Evil? Tian Jan tells the girl that she has a useful ability. The sister, with a smile on her face, asks if she can then help in the future. The main character replies that of course and asks him to tell him if she sees someone red, and then calls her the strongest assistant. He strokes the girl on the head and she laughs. The main character asks her if she is hungry and says that he will cook her something to eat. There are delicious meat dishes with vegetables on the table. The main character, Nan and Li Han, are sitting at the table. The main character tells his sister that his uncle will now live with them and he will also help with work on the farm. Nan says that although he doesn't really understand what's happening right now, it's his duty and adds that he will do what he's told. The girl raises her hands and says that this is great, and then asks where Grandpa Nan will live. The old man replies that he can build himself a thatched hut at the gate and live there and at the same time look after the entrance. The girl says that Uncle Nan now lives with them, but what about Xiao Tian? The old man looks down and says that he went to another world to atone for his sins. Li Han eats and says that it looks like the red glowing people want to hurt his brother, but they all don't live long. The girl smiles terribly and says that whoever dares to offend his brother in Xiao Hai will have his head blown off by Da Bai. The main character closes his eyes and smiles, and then calls the girl a little devil and asks her to focus on food. Nan looks at his hands and thought that it couldn't get any worse than now, and moreover, his hands are already covered in blood and now his only goal is to avenge his son and therefore he is ready to become Tian Jan's watchdog. The mustachioed man puts a cigar in his mouth. On TV they show a man in glasses with many microphones around him, who says that today is the 15th day since the disaster and the total death toll from the Blue Star is 386 million people. He adds that the total death toll in the Yanhuang Federation is 47 million and that the federal government is currently actively distributing grain reserves, and then says that soilless cropping technology will also be widely introduced into production. Someone comes into the office of a gray-haired man with a cigar. The man on the TV tells the citizens to remain calm, and then the guy who came into the office turns off the TV. A guy with black hair and glasses asks his father if he called him. The father asks his son if he reads Xiao Zhen's report. The guy answers yes and says that Lion Tianyu is dead. The gray-haired man takes out a cigar and says that this is true and it's a pity for him, since he brought good money, and then adds that now the mutation process has accelerated, and the military caught a mutation level 5 beast in the mountains of southern Xinjiang. Bai Jintan has a drop of sweat running down his cheek and asks if there are already animals with level 5 radiation, and then says that the most they can research now is level 3, or a sample catalyzed by his employees. The gray-haired man says that deep in the mountain forests there are no people, and the soil for the spread of radiation is rich, and even the lowest level animals can speed up their mutation by eating each other. Planes drop bombs on a toothy monster with many legs. The old man adds that modern technologies of mankind are nothing compared to the new natural evolution. He looks into the glass wall and tells his son that's why he wants him to take over their laboratory. And Xiao Zhen discovered that Lian Tianyu's secret experiment used a lot of interesting technology and asks him to combine it with the information they already have. Bai Jintan stands behind his father in a wheelchair. The gray-haired man asks to extract the V virus as soon as possible. Zhen Xiao throws the journal on the table and thought that there is nothing suspicious in the records before those 2 days, and it seems that the cause of his death is somewhere in this time. She closes her eyes and touches the bridge of her nose, and then she thought that the recordings from the cameras in those 2 days were erased by Lian Tianyu himself, and that's where the leads ended. She adds that it is useless to think about it and we need to decide on a new location for the research institute. The girl has a dissatisfied expression on her face. She leaves the office and thought that she needed to meet the new leader. A black car arrives at the building. Zhen Xiao greets Bai Jintan as he gets out of the car. They shake hands and the guy greets him back. Behind him stands a large man with a scar. The girl says she's glad to meet you and asks who the man behind him is. Bai Jintan with a smile on his face says that this is his assistant, Da Kui. He adds that he heard that they have already decided on the address of the new research institute, and then asks if she can give a tour. Zhen Xiao laughs a little and says that there are several places on the outskirts of the city and he can choose one. Bai Jintan responds positively. System windows with livestock, fish and edible products appear in the interface. One of the windows shows a table for pumping fish production depending on the level of water quality. The main character looks through the list of fish and thought that the choice is very large and different types of fish of the same level cost the same number of points. He took a closer look at the bluefin tuna and thought that this product, which was difficult to get before the end of the world, could now be obtained for 500 points. Tianjian raises his finger and asks his sister if she wants to eat blue salmon fillet. Li Han, with a face expressing a strong appetite, asks if this is the expensive tuna, the same red fish that melts in your mouth. The main character says that it was her and adds that before they didn't have enough money for it, but now they can safely eat it. Li Han tells his brother that he wants this tuna. Tianjian puts on a cartoon dog cap and tells the girl to order Da Bai to take the excavator, and they will go dig the pond. The girl raises her fist up with a smile on her face, and a happy Xiao Hai stands next to her. The main character draws boundaries with a stick. He drew a circle and standing next to the girl, Nan and Xiao Hai said that they will dig from here. Nan scratches Xiao Hai and asks the main character how old the dog is, and then adds that he has the impression that he has grown up. The main character thinks and asks if this is really so, and then says that he has been an adult for a long time, so he should not grow anymore. Van says that then maybe he can live well here and that's why he has gained weight, and then adds that he remembers that when he used to come to help on the farm, the dog was knee-deep to him, but now he has grown up and is hip-deep. The main character looks at Xiao Hai and thought that he sees him every day, and therefore did not notice, and then added that if these are the same changes as Xiao Bai, then things are bad. But after that incident he got rid of all the infected creatures and plants on the farm. The black dog has an extremely happy expression on his face. Tianjian wondered if this was a development caused by consuming anti-radiation vegetables like Li Han. The main character, with concern on his face, thought that he needed to observe and adds that the main thing is that nothing happens again. A notification appears about the arrival of a guest, and the main character turns around, thinking about who it is again. Dan asks what it is with a surprised expression. A notification appears that the guests are 2 men and a woman with a threat level of 8. Da Kui knocks on the gate, with Bai Jintan and Zhen Xiao standing next to him. Zhen Xiao asks the man with glasses if he really doesn't need to inspect the chosen place, and the security equipment there is much better. Bai Jintan says that this farm has a very good location. The area is also sufficient, and the security system, equipment and other things can be bought and installed here. It is not a problem, and he also likes it here. Zhen Xiao agrees with the guy with a fake smile and thought that even though he smiles all the time, it's impossible to talk to him, because she tried so hard when choosing new places, but he didn't even look. She adds that no one has come out for a long time and they probably won't be able to meet the owner at this time. Bai Jintan tells Da Kui to keep knocking. The main character approaches the gate and asks them what business they came for. A smiling Bai Jintan tells the main character that he is probably the owner here and has one thing to do, and then asks to let them in so they can talk face to face. Tianjian refuses and says that if there is something to say, then let them say it from there and quickly, because he is busy. Bai Jintan extends his hand and says that he understands, because this is the situation now. Zhen Zio wondered what kind of attitude he had. She takes a card out of her pocket, says her name and says that she is the president of Tianjin Company. She hands over a Tianjin Corporation card with her name on it. The main character thought that they had already learned about the farm. The girl tells him that he can name any price, in money or resources, she will arrange everything. She adds that if the main character has no other housing, then she can provide an apartment in the city center. The main character refuses and a drop of sweat appears on the girl's cheek. Zhen Zio asks the guy if he's not interested in at least hearing the price and adds that he's probably heard about Tianjin and maybe he'll change his mind after hearing the amount. The main character says that it's not worth it, because he likes to live here and he won't agree even if he's offered a mountain of gold. Hui grabs the bars and says that for now they are speaking in a good way. A notification appears that the farm gate is under attack with an attack power of 2, and the system asks whether to launch a counterattack. The main character closed his eyes a little and rejected the system's offer. The main character looks at the thug and thought that this man was able to alert the system with one blow. Bai Jintan shouts Hui's name. The brute turns to his master. The guy hits his subordinate on the cheek. He asks him if he really forgot what he taught him and adds that one more liberty, and he can roll back to where he crawled from. Hui apologizes and says it's his fault. The main character smiles and thought it was interesting. Bai Jintan with a smile on his face says that the subordinate does not understand anything and asks not to be taken seriously. The main character says that it's okay and asks the thug to come over. Hui is puzzled by what is happening, and the main character asks him to come even closer. Tianjian punches him in the stomach. The main character holds a hummingbird scout in his hand. Hui holds his stomach, and the main character tells him that he hit his goal, and he hit him and now they are even, and if that's all they have, then they can leave. Bai Jintan rests his chin while Zhen Zio looks at him. He tears off the sheet of paper with the number on the notepad and says that he thinks they were rude and asks to forgive them. The guy holds out a piece of paper and with a creepy smile says that this is his phone number and if the main character changes his mind, he can contact him at any time. The main character is silent for a while, and Zhen Zio thinks that he won't even take the number because he is so impolite. Tianjian takes a piece of notebook, and the girl thought that he was an arrogant scoundrel. The main character stands at the gate alone. Bai Jintan says that they will see each other again, after which they leave by car. Tianjian holds a piece of notebook in his hand and thought that he didn't think that the people from Tianjin would find the farm so quickly. With a slight smile on his face, he adds that it is not clear whether this was an accident. Using the interface, he enables viewing the location of Hummingbird 1. The main character is watching the car and thought that they would meet very soon. He opens the refrigerator and thinks that there are 10 days left until the next period of destruction. Crops are growing steadily. Excavation of the reservoir has begun and now it is necessary to develop cattle breeding. There is soup, fried meat and vegetables on the table. Li-Han shows her brother a bowl of food and asks him to try the sesame paste she made. The main character puts a piece of meat into the pasta and says that he will try it. Tianjian eats a piece of meat and says it's delicious. Li-Han makes a smug expression on his face and laughs, and then says that in winter you need to eat hot pot with lamb. It's dark outside. The girl says it's so warming. Brother and sister look happy. Nan asks them if they are dressed too lightly. He closed his eyes and added that besides, now you can't just grow plants. The main character looks at his uncle and says that he thinks that his uncle has been interested for a long time, but he cannot tell all the details. Nan says that he understands and should not ask as they have their own secrets. The main character smiles and tells Nan that he wants him to prepare for what he is about to hear, and then says that their food is special. He adds that if you eat it regularly, then some changes occur in the body and the cold becomes less scary, strength increases, and the body grows and unusual abilities may even appear. He tells Uncle Nan that he is waiting for changes. The old man points at himself and says that this looks like some kind of science fiction movie. Tianjian smiles with his eyes closed and tells Nan that everything is as he says, and then asks if this whole disaster is like science fiction. He opens his eyes and says that besides, if it weren't for the fossils, people wouldn't think that these huge prehistoric beasts once roamed the blue star. And judging by the situation they're in now, superpowers don't seem like anything anymore. Something surprising, especially in the conditions of the apocalypse. The main character says with a smile that this is more like evolution. Nan tells the main character that he doesn't really understand what he's talking about. Tianjan laughs and tells his uncle to eat twice. The girl raises her fists above herself and Nan asks if anyone came today. Tianjan says with a serious expression that they were people from Tianjin. Nan's face expresses surprise. He breaks the sticks and says this is how it is. He trembles and tells the main character whether even a useless old man like him can become stronger if he eats food from the farm. The main character answers with a smile on his face that of course. The old man exhales and with a satisfied expression on his face says that he understands. The main character tells the others to go to bed early, but he still needs to deal with one thing. The main character rides a motorcycle wearing a leather jacket and a hooded sweatshirt. Using the system, he makes a geolocation request and finds out that the target is located in the area of country villas. Many rich buildings are illuminated by moonlight. Jen Zio tells Bai Jinten that this is her house and today he will have to spend the night here. And tomorrow she will find him a new place to live. The guy comes inside and apologizes for disturbing him. The girl with a smile on her face tells the guy that they can choose any of the 4 rooms on the lower floor and asks him to bring dinner to their rooms. She goes up the stairs and says good night. Bai Jinten wishes her good night in return. A girl climbs the stairs and a hummingbird flies next to her. With a dissatisfied expression on her face, she says how annoying it is and wonders where the mosquitoes come from in such cold weather. Jen Zio washes in the shower room. She dried herself with a towel and thought that she was tired to death of looking at his face all day, and how good it would be to take a shower and take care of her skin. She looks at herself in the mirror and asks who this beauty is. With a smug expression on her face, she says that she has no equal at work, and then asks herself if she is ashamed. She slaps her cheeks and laughs as a hummingbird flies by her. The girl put a white mask on her face. She noticed a hummingbird flying nearby. Jen Zio walks around the room and says that it cannot be a mosquito, and judging by the sound it looks more like a beetle. She adds that it makes her so nervous and maybe he'll fly out on his own if she opens the window. She opens the window of her room. The girl looked out the window and with her eyes closed thought that after the air conditioning the street air was so refreshing. She opens her eyes and notices something. Jen Zio sees the main character wearing a hood and bandana and rappelling down a rope. The main character made a surprised expression on his face, and the mask peeled off from the girl's face. Tianjan jumps into the girl's room through the window. He covers the girl's mouth with his hand. She wonders what the guards outside are doing. The main character presses the girl to the floor. She thought that the guards needed to be fired and noticed that the main character was strong and she couldn't move. She adds that you can't break free and need to calm him down. The main character holds her head, covering her mouth, and tells her that he will let her go and asks her not to scream, and then adds that she should just try to throw something away, otherwise they will check who is faster, his knife or her guard. The girl agrees with the main character and thinks that she needs to calm down. Jan Zio covers himself with his hands and says that there is money and gold jewelry in the bedside table, and then asks not to touch her and she will not report it to the police. Tianjan asks her if she is ready to cooperate. The girl says that in this world everyone wants wealth and if he harms her, nothing good will come of it. She asks him to take the money and leave, which should be enough to buy a lot of food. The main character says that he did not come for money. The girl blushed and in a raised tone says to the main character whether he is a pervert. She presses her hand to her chest and calls the main character a scoundrel and says that she has a venereal disease that he will contract if he touches her. She adds that even at such a time he still thinks about such things. The main character covers her mouth with his fingers and says that's enough. He closes his eyes and tells her to answer whether she sent people to kill President Lion, because they still have not been able to find the killer. The girl, with a surprised expression on her face, wondered if he was really a scoundrel. The main character removes his fingers from her mouth. The girl asks the main character, the man Lion Tianyu, if he is and thought that Lion Tianyu's henchman had already died and where did he come from. The main character says that the president once helped him a lot and now that he died so strangely, he must take revenge for him. He adds that he heard that she is now investigating the cause of his death and therefore asks her to give all the materials on the case because he wants to look. Jen Zio, with an alarming expression, tells the main character to listen to her because he and the police are now trying to find out what happened then. But all the evidence ends abruptly and in such a short time they cannot establish who the killer was. The main character points his finger at her and says that President Lion died and she took his place, and how does he know that it was not she who had a hand in him? Jen Zio tells the main character that he has no evidence and Lion Tianyu already had too many enemies in Nanchang and it is quite expected if someone killed him in all this confusion. She adds that he died so shamefully and it was probably a revenge killing, but they did not have such hatred with him. And besides, killing someone for the sake of the presidency is too unreasonable. The main character thought that she was right and not stupid at all, and then said that he did not believe that they had no suspects. Gen Zio, with a worried expression on his face, says that they really don't exist and he himself destroyed all the documents and camera footage related to his conspiracy, and she now doesn't even know what people he communicated with before his death, and then asks how she should identify the suspects. She adds that she is concerned about the same issue. Tianjian thought that it seemed that Lion Tianyu did not plan to share with anyone, and even destroyed all the clues. Jan Zio says that now he can let her go. The main character turns towards the door and thought that someone was coming. A voice behind the door screams and asks what happened and asks to open the door. Tianjian knocks the girl out with his hand. The housekeeper stands behind Da Hui and says that the alarm went off and something must have happened, so he must save the president's life. The man knocks down the door and runs inside. The girl lies on the floor unconscious. Da Hui looks out the window, and the housekeeper asks Gen Zio what happened to her. The man inspects the area near the building and shouts that they missed him. The main character jumped to the ground. He made a thoughtful expression on his face and thought that monster with the scar had really broken down the door. He wondered if it was too rude to break into a girl's bedroom in the middle of the night. He turns his head and notices someone. Standing next to him is Bai Jinten. The main character says that he didn't leave any traces and asks how he found it. The guy with glasses smiles and tells the main character that he activated the gravity sensor when he jumped out of the window, and that's why he sent Da Hui to the door. He adds that the main character would not want to face them, so he jumped out of the window and this is the best solution. Tianjian thought that this man was smart. He runs towards the guy with glasses, wondering if some weakling will stop him. He attacks Bai Jinten with his fist. It hits the guy with glasses in the leg. The main character is surprised at where his blow landed. Bai Jinten jumped away from the main character. There was an abrasion at the site of the impact. The guy with glasses says that this is interesting. The arm bones are not comparable to the knee joint. He adds that according to his calculations, the protagonist's elbow and radius should now be broken due to being subjected to a load of approximately 700 kilograms, and then says that the wrist joint should also be dislocated and damaged due to the inability to cope with the load. But there is no sign of injury on him. Bai Jinten closed his eyes and asks the protagonist if he has practiced martial arts, and then says that he has not seen him use any special technique now, and that is why he is puzzled. He asks the main character if he can explain it to him or otherwise he won't be able to go anywhere today. The main character has a worried expression on his face. His hand trembles after the blow. The main character is enveloped in blue energy and wonders if his opponent has learned some kind of martial arts, since he was able to withstand the blow. He adds that although his body is already stronger than that of an ordinary person, but facing a person who is capable of fighting him is quite troublesome. The main character shifted his gaze and heard someone say that he heard voices in that direction and asked to go with him to look. Tianjian looks at his enemy again and apologizes, and then says that he has no time to entertain him and if they meet again, they will definitely have a duel. Bai Jinten jumped on the main character, with a serious expression on his face. He tells the main character not to even dream of leaving here today. Dirt flies into the face of a guy with glasses. He coughs because of the dust and dirt thrown by the main character. The main character runs away and says that it's time for him to go and advises the guy to wash himself. Bai Jinten, with a red face, coughs and turns towards the main character and then calls him vile. Tianjian jumped over the fence. One of the guards comes running and calls the name of the guy with glasses. Two guards approach Bai Jinten and ask him if he missed the enemy and if he is okay. The guy wipes his face from dirt. He's breathing heavily and his eyes look bloodshot. He thought that the main character is smart, and the body is in perfect condition, and he has almost surpassed the human limit, and is also an outstanding material. Bai Jinten says he is fine and just needs to wash his eyes. The guard on the right helps the guy and asks if he will go after the main character. The guy with glasses replies that it's not necessary, because he's too fast and you can't keep up with him, and then asks how the president is. He opens her eye and says it's nothing serious. The girl is lying in bed, and Bai Jinten and the housekeeper are standing nearby. The guy says that she is just unconscious and needs to give her medicine when she wakes up and he signed her dosage. The housekeeper suggests informing the police. Bai Jinten smiles a little and says that now the city is in such a mess, and they will not add work to the military, and nothing was stolen from them. The housekeeper agrees with the guy and adds that if it weren't for him, she doesn't know what would have happened. The security guard comes into the room and shouts that something is wrong. He tells the gentleman that he just checked his room and found that one hard drive was missing. Bai Jintan, with a gloomy expression on his face, asks if this is the gray one that was connected to the computer. The main character has a hard drive in his pocket. He is riding along the road on a motorcycle. The main character disconnected the cable from the laptop and thought that if you disconnect the network cable, there should be no problems, and now he will see what this Tianjin company is up to. Tianjin connects the hard drive to the laptop. He opens a folder with notes on the experiment and thinks that this guy is a researcher. He was looking at the files on the computer and thought that these were not Tianjin's secret documents. The document says that although many creatures have already died because of this, he still believes in this hypothesis, and radioactive food products that cause sudden changes in the body of animals and people are not in themselves a disaster, because they bring organisms not only death and deformity, but also development. The main character carefully reads the text on the laptop. Further in the document it is written that only this evolution is going the wrong way, so they die, and he is convinced that he can find the right path, even at the cost of human lives. The laptop has a symbol in the form of a blue circle with a plus inside. Bai Jintan stated in the document that he will lead humanity out of disaster to a new level of civilization, and then people will not be separated due to incurable diseases and will not have congenital defects and will not be considered a burden due to their weakness, and will also be able to compete in strength with warriors, with the gods, and his life expectancy will reach 300 years, and it does not matter what awaits him at the end of his journey, death, or the highest honor. Dark Huey stands behind his master, who is sitting at the laptop, and asks if he can find it. Li Jintan is using a laptop and says that perhaps he has figured out a way to hide or has not looked at the contents of the disk yet, and the main disk cannot detect his location. The bodyguard asks if there are important materials there. The guy with glasses holds his forehead and says okay. Anyway, there is only old data on that disk, and even if he looks at it, he still won't understand anything. At the end of the document, Bai Jintan wrote that he has no way back. The guy adjusts his glasses and thought that if he read those notes, he would guess why he actually came to Nanchang. Doc Huey says that it is suspicious that they were attacked as soon as they arrived in Nanchang, and could it be people number 7? Bai Jintan says that if number 7 wanted to do something to them, he would not have sent one rookie on the mission. But although that man is strong, his technique is rather clumsy. Further in the document it is written that there is darkness ahead, and an abyss behind, and he has nowhere to retreat. The main character sits at the same time at laptops and looks very similar. The main character, with a serious expression on his face, thought that Bai Jintan's goals coincide with his goals, but to achieve this in a whole human life is arrogant. The light of the screen is reflected in the main character's eyes. He wondered if they had already started doing experiments on people. People are in laboratory capsules for experiments. There are 4 level 1 Kingyuan chickens, a level 1 Bama decorative pig, and 2 level 1 Vance bunnies on the hay. Li Han has a happy expression on his face and asks where the main character got so many cute fluffies. Behind her stands Zio Hai. The main character rests his chin and thought that the explanation is too complicated for Li Han and she probably won't understand. The main character comes up with something to say and raises his index finger up. He says that he has Doraemon's magic bag and he can get whatever he wants out of it. The girl drew a heart and a star on the bunny, and then asked her brother if it was true. Tianjin tells his sister that this is their secret and cannot be told to anyone. The girl raises her hand up and says that's true. She holds the bunny under her arm. The main character, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, tells his sister that he cannot play with precious food and asks to put him in his place. The girl asks what food means. Li Han hugs the bunny and says that he is so cute and cannot be eaten, but she will raise him and he is still so small. The main character crosses his arms and says spicy rabbit. The girl makes a worried expression on her face. The girl's facial expression becomes even more alarming due to the fact that the main character names many delicious meat dishes, including pork steak, boiled chicken, and rabbit hot pot. Tianjin says that from now on, my sister will have to become a vegetarian. Li Han's face shows a strong appetite. The main character smiles and tells her that she should be grateful for the food that was grown with such difficulty, and then tells her to eat every last bite, because this is respect for food. The main character reaches out to the bunny and says that if she gets attached to him, it will hurt later, and therefore asks her to give it to him. The girl is silent about some opinion because of her thoughts. She hands the bunny to the main character and says that she will eat every last piece. A system notification appears that a rare product has been grown, white corn, and it needs to be collected as soon as possible. The main character lowered his gaze and thought what this rare product was. The main character tells his sister to play while he goes to check the beds. The girl agrees with the main character and leaves. The white ear of corn shines brightly. A system information window appears stating that level 2 white corn is a rare product and a disposable consumable. Explanation: a rare mutation product obtained from anti-radiation corn with a probability of 1 in 100,000. Effect: puts the user into a state of rage, which increases strength, speed, reaction by 10 times, and the effect lasts 30 seconds. The main character's face turned red and he thought that rage increases the characteristics for 30 seconds by 10 times. He holds the corn in his hand and thinks it's just like Popeye's sailor's spinach, and then wonders why there's only one here and if it grew anywhere else. The main character looks through the corn sprouts in one place and finds nothing. He looks at the sprouts elsewhere and notices that there are none here either. He peeks out from behind the vegetation and thought that there was nothing here either. The main character exhales and thought that it seems that such a rare product is really not often found, and you can only grow it if you are lucky. The main character closed his eyes and looked thoughtfully, and then thought that during planting the seeds, there was no mention of special products in the system, so this can be considered a little surprise. He adds that it looks like we need to get more serious about farming and will therefore increase the density by 1.5 times, since this could lead to more rare products. Tianjian shakes his head from side to side and thought that he was in too much of a hurry and this would increase the likelihood of their appearance. He adds that this will deteriorate the quality and yield of crops and many weak and dead seedlings may appear. He decides to leave everything as it is, because now he needs points first of all, and rare items are just a nice bonus. The sun illuminates Zhen Zio's room. She is lying on the bed eating and using her laptop. She remembers how the main character broke into her room and knocked her out. The girl takes a bite of a chip and, calling the main character a scoundrel, says that she will get him from underground. The angry girl asks what the security was doing and so many people were not able to catch some thief and the military and police especially do not have extra forces to investigate. The girl touches her chin with her finger and with a thoughtful look says that it seems that it will not be possible to find out his identity using the usual methods. She looks at the bag of hair and thought that this hair left on her clothes is too light. It's definitely not hers and it probably belongs to that guy. She remembers how the main character covers the girl's mouth. Zhen Zio waves his hands and tries to stop thinking about the main character, and then adds that he will definitely catch him. The girl from the stairs tells Bai Jintan sitting on the first floor that she has business with him. The guy slams the book in his hand and asks the girl if she feels better. Zhen Zio sits on the sofa and replies that yes, and it's all thanks to him, since the massage technique that Bai Jintan taught her turned out to be very effective and today nothing hurts her anymore. She adds with a small smile on her face that she has already chosen a place for the research center and it is not far from that farm, in the place where there used to be a factory, but because of what was happening it closed and was sold to them at a low price, and the location is good, quiet and remote. Everything is as Bai Jintan wanted. The guy thanks the girl and asks if she wanted to talk about something else. Zhen Zio said that she was embarrassed to ask for this, but she thought that since he is an expert in biological research, he would definitely be able to do a DNA test. She adds that she would therefore like to ask Bai Jintan to find a person in Nancheng whose DNA matches the DNA of this hair. The main character looks at the bag of hair and says that with all due respect, if she wants to compare it with the DNA of every resident of the city, this is tantamount to finding a needle in a haystack, not to mention the time it will take to compare about 100,000 samples. He adds that getting DNA samples from every Nancheng resident is already a huge undertaking. With a slight smile, he asks if this person is so important. Zhen Zio laughs and says that it is not that he is important and she just wants to find the bandit who attacked her that day, and then asks her to forget about the request if it is too difficult. Bai Jintan says that it is not difficult for him and Zhen Zio is surprised. The guy presses his palm to his chest and with a smile on his face says that he is ready to help with this. The girl tells the guy that she relies on him. The voice says that the reagent with a dilution of 10% has been successfully introduced. There are red particles flying around a syringe with red liquid. The voice says that the test subject's muscles have become denser and cellular activity has increased 1,000 times. The monster opens its red eye. He opens the rest of his eyes with multiple pupils inside them. The voice says that these are compound eyes. The test subject's genes were infected with the genes of other creatures. Bai Jintan, Da Kui and the girl scientist stand behind armored glass and watch the monster. The chains are broken and a voice reports that the test subject has entered an aggressive state. The monster raises its head and screams loudly. The voice says that V-shaped virus B, experiment number 34 failed. The monster hits the armored glass with its head. He hits the glass with his powerful hand and a voice reports that the outer glass has been broken. Jinten watches the monster through the cracked glass. The voice says that he will soon break through another glass. Many bloody spots appear. The large mansion is illuminated by evening light. Many people are walking around the main hall. 3 boys stand apart from other people and talk. The guy with the gray shorts calls the guy in front of him Bai Jingaming and asks him why he left his poor brother alone. Bai Jingaming crossed his arms and asked his interlocutor what he was talking about. With a dissatisfied expression on his face, he says that he is just an illegitimate. Bai Jinten leaned against the white column. The guy in red shorts offers to tease him in this case. Bai Jingaming laughs and agrees. The boys hold Bai Jinten by the head and plunge it into the water. The guy is suffocating underwater and running out of air. One of the children dips Bai Jinten's head into the water of the fountain and tells him to look at his scared face. Another guy presses him with his foot and asks him to press him harder because he is illegitimate. Bai Jingaming crossed his arms and with a smile on his face tells the guys to be Polish and not leave marks on his body because even though he is trash, he has the surname Bai and it needs to be respected. Bai Jinten coughs due to water in his lungs. He turns his head back and asks his elder brother to let him go. One of the bullies tells Bai Jingaming that Bai Jinten called him a little brother. The bullied guy again asks his older brother to leave him. Bai Jingaming gritted his teeth and said that this was an abomination and then called him a plebeian. Bai Jinten opens his eyes, his face covered in cold sweat. He lifts his body off the bed and screams asking not to hit him. He holds his forehead with his hand. He's breathing heavily, beads of sweat running down his cheek. The red capsule glows in front of him and he thinks of Bai Jingaming. The guy thought that now the stability of the V-shaped virus is growing and as soon as he creates an ideal sample, there will be one step left before its defeat. A monster with glowing blue eyes opens its mouth. He stands among dense vegetation in the dark. The presenter says that it is now the 19th day since the world changed and their correspondent reported that more than 100 carcasses of mutated livestock were discovered in the village of Nanchai. He adds that they are piled up right here, but where they came from remains unclear and the Epidemic Prevention Department has already processed these carcasses. Li Han and Xiao Hai are watching TV. The main character asks the girl why she is watching the news today instead of cartoons. She replies that the main character always considers her a child, and then says that she is also watching what is happening and she cannot hide behind her back forever. Tianjian smiles and says that the fact that she can see other people's intentions is a big help. Li Han cuddles up to the dog and says that she wants to grow up quickly in order to help her brother even more, and then adds that Xiao Hai has already become tough, and she also needs to become even tougher. Li Han made a satisfied expression on her face. Tianjian thought that he had observed Xiao Hai and he is not prone to aggression at all, and then adds that the changes in his physique must be an evolution after consuming anti-radiation products, and now he is calm. The main character exhales and says that he and Uncle Nan will continue to dig the pond, and then she can have something to eat if she gets hungry. An hour later, the girl lies on Xiao Hai and says that her brother was right and she was hungry. She sees something on the table and thought it was there. She opens the wooden box and finds 2 level 4 divine enhancement seeds. Li Han opens the box and says that these are glowing nuts. She holds them in her hand and brings them to Xiao Hai, and then says that there are just 2 of them between the 2 of them. She eats her seed and forces the dog to eat it, who did not expect it. She spits out the seed and says it is bitter. Xiao Hai swallowed the seed, and the girl said that it was tasteless and she needed to rinse her mouth. The dog lies down on the floor because he wants to sleep. He lowers his head onto his paws. Xiao Hai fell asleep on the floor of the room. The farm area is illuminated by moonlight. The room contains a lot of building materials and barrels with boxes. Sleepy Nan wipes his eye and holds a flashlight in his hand. He asks what that sound is. He shines a flashlight into the corner of the room and sees Xiao Hai. Xiao Hai's muzzle is bloody and his eyes glow blue. Nan is shocked by what he sees. The dog jumped on the old man with lightning speed. It opens its mouth with sharp teeth. Nan dodges the dog's attack. His flashlight fell out of his hand and now lies on the floor. He looks at the dog and a drop of sweat runs down his cheek. He wonders if it is Xiao Hai. The dog's eyes look red, there are white elements in his fur, and his face looks very angry. A trace of red energy comes from the dog's eye. Nan thought that he became like a wolf and probably mutated. But it doesn't look like a normal mutation and he doesn't try to attack him anymore. Nan raises his hand and says that it is him, Uncle. The dog shakes his head and the old man thought that he seemed to be reacting. Nan reaches out to him and asks him if he is hungry, and then tells him not to be afraid and that he will bring food. The dog howls in warning, causing the uncle to freeze. The dog breaks the window and jumps out into the street. The uncle gets scared because of the dog's actions. He looks out the window and asks Xiao Hai not to go near the gate because there is electricity on the walls. The dog stops in front of the gate. He takes a leap and jumps over a wall with barbed wire. Nan thought that Xiao Hai jumped over such a high wall so easily. Tianjian runs to his uncle and asks him what happened. Nan tells the main character that the dog suddenly went crazy and ran outside and he himself doesn't know what happened to him. But it doesn't seem like an ordinary mutation, since he still recognizes him. The main character made a worried expression on his face. Li Han runs to the men and shouts that Xiao Hai is missing and he was not at her bedside when she woke up. The main character asks the girl why she ran out. The main character tells her not to worry, because maybe he is bored of sitting at home and so he will return home after running a little. He adds that she should come back. Li Han replies that Xiao Hai never left her side while she was sleeping, and then asks what the rabies Nan was talking about means. Tianjian looks at his sister's dirty feet and asks her why she is without shoes. She jumps into the arms of the main character and says that she is worried about Xiao Hai, and is afraid that he will become the same as Xiao Bai. The main character tells her not to think about it, and then asks if Xiao Hai has eaten anything unusual lately. The girl opens her mouth wide and says no, because she remembers what her brother said and he ate only what was grown on the farm. But in the evening he ate a glowing nut that the main character left in the box. Tianjian, with a serious expression on his face, thought that she was really talking about level 4 divine enhancement seeds. He gritted his teeth and thought that the dog had definitely evolved, and then asked why he was angry. He calls the system and asks if level 4 seeds have a side effect in the form of loss of self-control. But the system does not answer. The main character looks at his crying sister and says that he will go look for Xiao Hai, and then asks her to be smart and return to the house with grandfather Nan. Li Han tells his brother that he must bring him back. Tianjian tells her not to worry, because he will definitely find him and return him, because Xiao Hai is a member of their family. The dog runs among the trees in the forest. He feels that he is hot. Red energy emanates from his eye and he thinks about how he wants to tear apart fresh meat and gnaw the throats of everything that moves. Steam comes out of the dog's mouth and he thinks that it is impossible because he cannot harm people. Otherwise he will never be able to return to his owner. The dog runs quickly along a forest path. Someone in a hood noticed Xiao Hai and thought that it was a holy beast. The stranger smiles and thinks that this is exactly the holy beast from the prediction. Blue particles fly around the running dog. The stranger thought that he would take him with him and God would like it. The main character puts his hand to his temple and hears that the protagonist's patrol robots did not find anyone. The guy's cheek was dripping down his cheek and he thought that it looked like Xiao Hai was no longer in the area, and he had to find him quickly, because if the military got ahead of him, then Xiao Hai would definitely be locked up. The main character turns his head and asks who is there. A gray-haired woman with gray hair and a raincoat with a hood asks if he is looking for a black wolf, and if it is his dog. The main character asks his aunt if she saw in which direction he ran away, and thinks that this woman is strange. She smiles and asks the main character if he knows the truth about the disaster that occurred. The main character simply asks you to tell him where his dog ran, and the rest is not interesting to him. Auntie shouts that it is because mankind has done too much evil, and they angered the gods, so they sent disasters to punish people. She adds that this catastrophe can only be stopped by exterminating all of humanity, and if the main character wants to be saved, he must join their salvation society and repent before the gods, and only then will he have a chance to survive. The main character thought whether these were swindler sectarians, and then asked if there were any conditions for joining their salvation society. A woman with a gloomy expression on her face says that their society of universal salvation has a hierarchy and members of society at different levels pay membership fees of different sizes. She reports that from 3 to 300,000 and the higher the level, the closer you are to God and the greater the chances of salvation. But since the main character, a young man, is the owner of the holy beast, then he just needs to bring it to the meeting. Tianjian, with a skeptical expression on his face, tells her that next time, before brainwashing, she needs to learn to lie better. The woman asks the main character if he dares to disobey God's will. The main character grips the handlebars of the motorcycle and apologizes to his aunt, and then tells her that she is a little late with her naive teachings and he does not have time for these games. He asks if the gods will grant him salvation. The main character leaves on a motorcycle and says that the only one who will save him is himself. The woman looks after the main character as he leaves. She says with an angry expression that non-believers go to hell and calls the main character an insignificant worm. The main character leaned his back on his car. He closed his eyes and smokes a cigarette. He looks towards the bushes and wonders what that sound is. He parted the bushes and made a surprised expression on his face. He sees a black dog lying in blood. He looks at the dog's head and thought that it must have been hit by a car. Tianjian has a serious expression on his face. He sees a small black puppy drinking his mother's milk. He took the puppy and thought that it was still alive and would die in a few days without a matri. The puppy moves its paws. The main character took it with both hands and tells him that he were left without parents. The puppy sleeps in the palms of the main character and invites him to go with him. Xiao Hai bites the man's leg and growls. Two guys watch a dog bite the leg of a guy in a green raincoat. The guy with black hair asks to quickly call someone for help because the guy can't stand it anymore. Moonlight illuminates a multi-story building. Bai Jintan approaches two armed guys and asks where the mutated beast comes from. A black-haired guy with a pistol says that one of them went into the forest to smoke and threw a cigarette butt at this beast, and it went crazy and attacked him. The guy with glasses asks why he did it. The man with the gun replies that the animal was hiding in the bushes, and the guy didn't notice it, but they had already called the military. Bai Jintan turns his head to the guard and asks him again whether this beast was hiding in the bushes. The guy with glasses thought that animals with low mutation have no intelligence. They just wander around, following the warmth of living things, and this must be a high level of mutation. He looks at Xiao Hai and thought that he also bit the guard on the leg, and did not kill him. The bitten guy screams in pain. Bai Jintan thought that he seemed to know the danger of weapons and was trying to use the guard as a hostage. He adds that it is frighteningly smart and if used for research, it could solve the problem of virus V instability. He wonders if this is the ideal specimen he was looking for. The guy with the glasses turns to the guard and tells him to call more people because they have to catch this beast alive before the military arrives. The guard replies that he understands. Bai Jintan smiles and asks to bring a weapon with a tranquilizer because he needs the dog alive. The guard hands him a tranquilizer gun. The guy with glasses tells guys with guns to be careful and only aims at the limbs. Bai Jintan aims at the dog with a pistol. He pulls the trigger and the tranquilizer is fired. Xiao Hai turns his head towards Bai Jintan. 3 syringes are flying towards the dog, but he has already run away. The guard next to the guy with glasses shoots from a firearm. One of the bullets hits the dog. Xiao Hai makes a sweeping attack at the guard, but misses him. Bai Jintan tuts due to unsuccessful hits. The dog turns in the opposite direction from the enemies and the guy with glasses shouts that he is trying to escape. Xiao Hai runs deep into the forest and Bai Jintan orders to pursue him. Notifications appear with a report from Hummingbird number 2 with information that large dog tracks have been found 700 meters to the southeast. The main character rides through the forest on a motorcycle. He turns sharply and says that he should go there. Tianjian gets off the motorcycle and notices footprints and blood on the ground. He notices that the prints are large, and the blood, judging by the color, is fresh. A drop of sweat runs down the main character's cheek and he thought it was Xiao Hai. He wonders what happened and how he could have gotten such serious injuries. There are 3 cars driving behind Xiao Hai. Bai Jintan looks out of the car window with a pistol in his hand and thought that he had never met such fast mutants. He smiles madly and thought that he was all in anticipation. Xiao Hai quickly runs through the trees, and the guy with glasses focuses on his muscles and thought that he simply had to catch this perfect creature. The dog runs at lightning speed along a forest path. Tianjian receives a notification that the target has been detected and starts transmitting the image. Blue particles fly around the main character. The robot films how cars drive behind Xiao Hai. The robot records the car with Bai Jintan. The main character enlarges the image and thinks that he needs a face. Hummingbird close-up shows a guy with glasses. Tianjian is surprised and thought that it was him, that mad scientist again, and then wonders why they are chasing Xiao Hai and does he really want to capture Xiao Hai as a test subject. The main character opens the system interface and takes out white corn. He holds it in his hand and thought that these scoundrels should not even dream. One of the bullets hits the ground near the dog. Xiao Hai tries to break away from the cars, periodically making jumps. Bai Jintan from the car commands the second and third to surround him from the left and right and adds that he should try to drive him to the old factory in front. The guy's subordinates in glasses take his order and approach from different directions. Xiao Hai looks back with his pupils. The dog jumps away from one of the trees. He heads towards the car. He lands on the roof of the car. The driver is shocked because the dog is on the roof of the car. He screams loudly, and the driver of the other car reports that the second car was hit. One of the guards shoots the dog. 2 bullets fly towards Zio Hai and holds the guard's hand in his teeth. The bullets are aimed at the dog's head. The bullet is reflected in his eye. A palm shrouded in blue energy catches 2 bullets. The dark silhouette is enveloped in destructive blue energy. The main character throws bullets on the ground and receives a notification that he has entered a state of rage, and the effect will last another 26 seconds. The car is heading towards the main character. Bai Jinten is surprised and thinks, what kind of white light is this? Zio Hai thought it was the owner. The main character is shrouded in destructive power. He suddenly disappears from the place where he had just been. He attacks one of the enemies very quickly and is notified that the effect will last for another 20 seconds. He runs near another of the enemies. The effect will last for another 12 seconds. He runs behind one of the guards. Bai Jinten fires his gun and asks what it is. He opens his eyes wide. The effect will last for another 5 seconds. The main character looked at the guy with glasses. He kicks him in the head. Blood flies out of Bai Jinten's mouth. The main character has a crazy expression on his face. The effect will last for another 2 seconds. Tianjian makes a dash and thought that everything was bad. He sits down and thought that this effect had a side effect. The effect will last for another 1 second. Bai Jinten rises from the ground and thought that fortunately, he managed to block the blow a little. Otherwise he would have said goodbye to his life right there. He aims a pistol at the main character and thought that this person is too dangerous and needs to get rid of him. Zio Hai makes several jumps towards the guy with glasses. He pulls the trigger of the gun. Zio Hai bites Bai Jinten on the neck, who manages to fire a shot. The bullet hits the main character's shoulder. Zio Hai grabbed the guy's neck tightly. The main character lies unconscious on Zio Hai. He opens his eyes. Zio Hai is breathing heavily because he is carrying Tianjian. The main character calls Zio Hai by name. The dog looks at the main character. The main character rolled to the ground from the dog's back. Zio Hai falls to the ground not far from the main character. Tianjian holds his shoulder and asks Zio Hai what's wrong with him. He clenched his teeth. Saliva flows from the dog's mouth, and the main character asks the system what is happening here. He turns to the system again. Zio Hai gritted his teeth. Blood cells fly near DNA. The dog remembers how he bit Bai Jinten. Particles break off from DNA. The dog remembers how he bit into the neck. The divine level seed is all cracked. The main character shouts the name Zio Hai and sees a web appearing around the dog. It envelops the dog from all sides. Zio Hai is inside a large cocoon. The main character looks at the cocoon with a shocked expression. A diagram is shown on the medical monitor screen. In addition to the chart, there are many other indicators on it. Bai Jinten lies on the bed with an oxygen mask. One of the guards apologizes and says that now the situation is very sad, because after the attack he received a concussion, and the pituitary gland was damaged and pressed on the blood vessels of the brain. He adds that it is a miracle that he is still hanging on with a fatal wound on his neck. Zhen Zio, Da Kui and the guard look at the guy through the glass. The guard apologized to Ms. Zhen Zio and said that they did everything they could. Zhen Zio crossed her arms and says that there is no need to make excuses to her and adds that their direct duty is to protect Researcher Bai even at the cost of his own life, and he is now lying on this bed on the brink of death. The guard says that he is so sorry and says that Researcher Bai so wanted to catch that mutated beast that he only took the advanced group, and when they arrived in time, the advanced group had already suffered serious losses and only Da Kui survived. Zhen Zio says that everything has already happened and she doesn't want to listen to excuses, and then asks the guard if he saw what the attacker looked like. The guard replies that no, and it was a very rapid white glow. Zhen Zio shouts that if he is going to tell fairy tales, then let him come up with something better. The guard bows and says that this is the truth and he is not deceiving her. The girl screams that she didn't pay them so much to now listen to all this nonsense. The doctor exclaims that Bai's pulse rate is falling and this is a cerebral hemorrhage again. Zhen Zio shouts to the doctor to save him immediately. The doctor holds a paper tablet in his hand and replies that it is useless. He says that he can't be saved and it's better to talk to him one last time and maybe he'll tell you something. The girl and Da Kui have worried expressions on their faces. The doctor says that you need to inject adrenaline. Bai Jinten opens his eyes a little. He says Da Kui's name in a low voice. His subordinate replies that he is here. The guy asks to inject him with a V-shaped virus, which is why his subordinate is surprised. Da Kui, with an alarming expression on his face, shouts that until now there have been no successful cases with people, and if it doesn't work out, then he won't even be able to die as a normal person. Bai Jinten says that dying like this or dying as a monster is the same for him. Drops of sweat run down his face and he asks you to let him take a chance. He clenches his trembling hand into a fist and says that he doesn't want to lose. Q tells the doctors to inject researcher Bai Jinten with 5 milliliters of V-shaped virus reagent and prepare chains and a collar with explosives. They put a collar around the guy's neck. Q asks Bai Jinten if he should call his family. The lead on the collar glows red. The guy says that there is no need and these are just people with the same blood as his and they are not his family. He is given an injection into a vein from a red syringe. Bai Jinten screams loudly and shakes his head. His reddened eyes roll back into his head. Pieces of the guy's DNA are peeling off. Gen Zio closes his mouth in fear. Q closes his eyes and beads of sweat run down his cheek. He breaks off pieces of the cocoon. The main character pays attention to this. Large cracks appeared on the cocoon. The cocoon is being destroyed more and more. The dog gets out of the destroyed cocoon. The main character opened his eyes wide. Zio Hai peeks out from the cocoon, now looking like a humanoid with a dog's head. Steam emanates from Zio Hai's mouth and his eyes glow blue. The main character says the name Zio Hai with a shocked expression. A humanoid dog approaches the main character. He touches the main character's shoulder. He squeezed his hand tighter and Tianjan's wound began to bleed. Van tells Li Han to be smart and go to bed, because Zio Hai shouldn't have run far and the boss will be back soon. The uncle trembles and says that it is so cold here, and then asks the girl what will happen if she gets sick. Li Han with a sad expression on her face says that she is not cold and feels good, so she will wait for her brother here. The girl tells her uncle that if he doesn't believe him, then let him touch her warm hands. Man touches and says that it's true. He feels the warmth of his hand and says that eating food from the farm can strengthen the body so much. The girl replies that she has evolved into a superheroine after all. Man says that he will wait for the boss with her, and then sits her on his lap and asks if she can sit on his lap and be a hot water bottle. Night gradually gives way to morning. The bright sun illuminates the farm. Li Han wakes up due to sunlight. Nan is still sleeping, and the girl opens one eye completely. Nan also wakes up because the girl is screaming for her brother. The girl runs to the gate and shouts to the main character that he has returned, and then asks if he found Zio Hai. The girl opened her eyes wide and asked her brother what was wrong with him. Zio Hai holds the main character in his arms. The newly evolved Zio Hai had not yet learned to control the power, and this led to an open wound and fractures in Tianjan. The main character with a drop of sweat on his cheek says that he returned Zio Hai. Nan made a shocked expression and the girl's face turned red with happiness. A system window appears, where the name of the dog and its species are indicated, an evolved wolf dog. Li Han looks at the evolving dog in pants and a shirt and says that he has changed so much, but is still the same gray, and then says that he wants to go upstairs. The girl sits on Zio Hai's shoulders and laughs. A system window appears with characteristics, type of evolution, reversion, age 3, strength 30, intelligence 10, speed 42, psyche 10, hunger 5. Zio Hai thought that the little mistress was still the same mischief. In the system window it is written that this is a wolf dog, whose genes merged with human ones and a gene mutation began, due to which various characteristics will be improved, and it is important to note that there is no upper limit to improvement. Tian, it's a pity, with a bullet wound near his collarbone. He thought that earlier Zio Hai lost his temper due to a gene mutation and ran away because he didn't want to hurt them. Tianjan remembered how the dog bit Bai Jinten and thought that the genes merged with human ones, and did this really happen then? Man approaches the main character with a container in his hands and says that he brought a first aid kit. The main character, with a smile on his face, asks his uncle to sterilize the scalpel with which he wants to remove the bullet. The main character holds a sterilized scalpel in his hand. Man asks if he'll really get it like that, and suddenly there will be an infection. The main character asks his uncle not to worry. The main character takes out a bullet with a scalpel and it falls to the floor. The main character mentally commands the system to take out the healing carrot, and it materializes in his hand. Uncle was surprised because Tianjan had a carrot appear out of thin air. The main character bites a healing carrot. Nan, with a frightened expression on his face, became fixated as a carrot appeared out of thin air. The wound on the main character's body immediately heals. It healed, and in its place only a red spot remained. The main character looks at his hands and notices that the broken bones have also healed. The cells of every organism on the blue star are constantly dividing and multiplying, and old cells die off and are replaced by new ones to continue life. One blue cell splits into two. During the process of division, the cell is for the most part stable and can completely reproduce all the elements of the old cell. But this stability is relative and under certain conditions, and at a certain point a new gene suddenly appears, replacing the original one. This is the mutant gene. Satisfied, Li Han sits on Xiao Hai's shoulders. A gene mutation has two possible outcomes, and the first is favorable development. For example, Tianjian, Li Han, Xiao Hai. Their bodies acquired new and useful abilities and characteristics. This is called evolution. The second is unfavorable development. The main character is lost in thought and looking somewhere. These are animals that have mutated all over the world. They have terrifying power, but there is a fatal flaw in their genes. Many silhouettes of animals with pink glowing eyes appear. Even if they miraculously awaken their consciousness, they still won't live long. They will only eke out a miserable existence. Bai Jintan opens his eyes wide. He breaks the shackles with which he is chained to the bed. Da Kui shouts to the master that he has woken up. The guy holds his chest with his fingers and wonders if he survived. His body is covered in red lines, his heart glows blue and bones protrude from his torso. He lifts his torso off the bed. The doctor says that this is just a miracle and no one has ever retained their sanity after being injected with a V-shaped virus. Bai Jintan holds his chest with both hands. The doctor says that this victory marks the transition to the next stage of research, and then congratulates the gentleman. Bai Jintan says it's not that simple. Da Kui, Zhen Xiao and the doctor look at the guy in surprise. He smiles and says that he did survive, but that doesn't mean the V-shaped virus allowed him to mutate perfectly. Inside the bones, which glow blue, is a red heart. The guy adds that his mutation still failed and he acquired strength and speed superior to ordinary people, but negative changes occurred in the structure of his body. The shadow of the hair covers the guy's eyes and he says that he will live another week at most, and if they don't find that perfect mutant and take the DNA, then in 7 days he will die. Bai Jintan, with bones protruding from his back, puts on a shirt. Da Kui appears and tells his master that Officer Yuan from the Nanchang Military Police Department has arrived. Bai Jintan replies that he understands. Da Kui tells his boss that while investigating an intruder, he disturbed the military. The guy with a dissatisfied expression on his face replies that he knows boxing, Thai boxing, Sambo, kickboxing, as well as other martial arts and various grappling techniques. Hair covers Bai Jintan's eyes. He says that in addition, he has a golden dragon badge in the 65 kg category issued by the Federal Sanda Association, which indicates that his reaction speed and physical fitness are 2.8 times higher than that of an ordinary adult. And in other words, such a person can already be called the strongest person in the world, and there are few people who can resist him. But the person who attacked him cannot be considered a person, and the source of his strength is the same as that of a mutated wolf, so he also went through a complete mutation. With a thoughtful look, he says that perhaps there is only one source of their mutation, and then this explains why he came to save that wolf. He adds that his technique reminded him of someone. Da Kui remembers the main character as a hooded intruder and as a person who is shrouded in blue energy, and then asks his boss if he suspects that these two are the same person. He tries to say what will happen if they let the military know about the results of their research. Bai Jintan interrupts his subordinate and says that he knows what he is doing. He adds that the V-shaped virus did not allow him to achieve the state of perfect mutation, but if it helps him find that perfect mutant. Bai Jintan walks down the corridor with his subordinate and says that after all, he doesn't have much time left. They approach a woman who is standing at the double doors. Bai Jintan calls her a UN officer. The girl turns towards the two. The boss, with a smile on his face, apologizes for keeping her waiting and says that he hopes his appearance doesn't scare her. The girl in the bulletproof vest with a surprised look replies that she won't scare. Senior Police Officer Nancheng Yuan Y. She asks if this is something that should interest the military. He unbuttons his shirt and says that he asks to forgive him. The girl opened her eyes wide. The guy unbuttoned his shirt and now you can see protruding bones and a glowing blue heart. He says that in his current state, he is not a survivor because these bones, as his mutation develops, will pierce the heart, and then the moment of his death will come, so he has little time left. Many bones grow around the heart. He holds a bag of hair in his hand and tells the woman that in return he hopes for help in finding this person, and the sooner the better. Yuan rests her chin and makes a thoughtful expression. She smiles and says it's dealt with. There are blue particles flying around the farmhouse. The main character buys 10 pieces of divine enhancement seeds of level 4. Xiao Hai sleeps next to Li Han. According to the description of the system, these are divine enhancement seeds of level 4. Variety, cherry tomato, soil requirements, fertile and high quality land, irrigation requirements, watering with clean water at least once a day, ripening time 18 days, survival time 18 days. Many seeds materialize against the background of the system window. According to information from the system, The effect of the seeds promotes gene duplication, strengthens the beneficial elements of the genetic development of the person who consumes the seeds, neutralizes negative genetic mutations, and promotes evolution. The main character holds seeds in his hand and says that the level 4 seed buff is promoting evolution and calls them the key to ushering in a new era for humanity. He clenched his teeth in joy. He clenched the seeds in his fist and said that if in the future people turn into gods, then with the help of this he will become the supreme deity. Tianjian sits by the haystack and beds, thinking that the growing conditions for them are quite strict, and in order to plant them, you will first have to spend a lot of points to improve the quality of the land. He adds that it is expensive, but you have to pay. Notifications appear indicating that 95,000 points have been spent in exchange for 19 soil improvements. Points left, 5,680,000. Normal soil x19 upgraded to fertile soil. The beds glow blue. They begin to shine as the soil has become fertile and is now black soil, rich in nutrients that can be used to grow level 4 crops, and also increases the yield of level 3 crops and below. The main character looks out the system window and thinks that there is not much time left before the second period of destruction, and fertilizer is also expensive. The system interface says that the second wave of destruction will come soon. The main character buys 12 bottles of fertilizer and they materialize in front of him. He decides to add a couple of robots to speed up the process, and still needs to leave points to buy regular crops to improve the farm. Tianjian crosses his arms and watches the robots working in the beds. He thought that he needed to grow as many plants as possible before the second wave of destruction occurred. Blue particles fly over the farm. Huge skyscrapers tower over the night city. Two men in raincoats approach the automatic doors. The old woman calls the guy next to him the Immaculate Falcon and asks if she can see His Excellency the wisest ruler. The man replies that she only needs to tell the Lord everything exactly as she saw it because the Lord knows what to do next. He informs her that although she did not attract the required number of believers this week, if this information is true, she will still receive enough gifts from the deity. The man smiles, and the old woman says that this is wonderful, and she thanks God. The automatic doors open and the woman says that their family can survive for another month, and only those who faithfully worship God will be able to survive in this world. The two of them walk along a long corridor with columns. They come to a spacious hall, and the man says that to the wisest ruler, that a pure sheep has reported that a new sacred beast has been discovered. The bishop was talking to a man with a tie and turns to the two people who arrived. He asks for more details. He claps and says it's great. He smiles and says that with him the power of their God will increase even more. A man with a tie and a business suit congratulates the ruler and adds that by feeding on the new sacred beast, their God will be able to appear to them very soon. There is a shiny object sticking out of his pocket. He asks what about the last batch. Next to them is a large dark hole. The Lord says that he can take her away, and the deity has long been tired of these pathetic snacks, and they need to return the sacred beast and sacrifice it to their God when he reveals himself. The creature from the hole says that it wants something. The Lord says that he understood and thanks the creature for his mercy. The creature from the hole says it wants to eat the puppy. A TV presenter tells breaking news. She reports that a tragic accident occurred on a mountain road in the suburbs of Nanchang in which a passenger car drove off the mountain road at a turn, overturned, fell from a 100-meter cliff, and exploded. She adds that it was established that there were 3 people in the car, 2 adults and 1 child. The main character sighs looking at the screen. He is cutting vegetables on a board, and the woman on TV says that the child flew out of the car and ended up hanging from a tree branch near the scene of the incident, thanks to which he survived and was sent to a local hospital to receive medical attention. Tianjian, with a thoughtful look, calls the child poor because he is so small and has already lost both parents. He then wonders what time it is. He looks at his watch and thought that mom and dad were somehow carried away by their journey and said that they would be home by 3 o'clock, but they still weren't there. He puts the knife on the table and puts his smartphone to his ear. The answering machine says that the called party's phone is switched off and you need to leave a message. The main character silently listens to these words. He is sitting at the table with food and called again and then received the same answer. There are a variety of 4 delicious dishes on the table. The answering machine again replies that the subscriber is switched off. A broken phone lies on the ground surrounded by flames. Firefighters put out a fire in a car and one of them shouts that the fire is too strong. The fire intensifies and the fireman shouts that another fire truck needs to be called. Firefighters are carrying Lee Han on a stretcher and one of them says that this little girl was hanging on a branch and lost consciousness, so she urgently needs to be sent to intensive care. Another fireman says that she is very small and asks to drive her more carefully since she cannot have fractures. A fireman and 2 police cars drive along the road. The fire intensified even more. One of the nurses says that they checked the database and found out that this girl is from an orphanage and she was adopted just 2 days ago. Another nurse asks if it were her adoptive parents who died, and then adds that she is not a child, but some kind of plague and this couple was so unlucky. Li-han has a desperate expression on his face. The first nurse says that she heard that orphanage did not comply with all established procedures and the child was taken away until all the papers were completed. Nurses are standing outside the room with a little girl. The second nurse asks if the police have contacted the relatives of the victims. The first nurse says yes, they should arrive soon. Officer Yuan asks for directions to the morgue. The nurse turns around and asks if the officer is here to identify the body. Yuan asks to lead them, and the main character follows her. The nurse says to follow her. Tianjian stands behind them with a desperate expression. His gaze looks very empty. He noticed something. In front of him are burnt human bodies. Yuan turns to the main character and asks for her deepest condolences. Tianjian looks shocked. He says that these are not his parents and they definitely made a mistake somewhere, because they just went out for a while, and then asks where that child came from and adds that this is definitely some kind of mistake. The officer, with concern on his face, apologizes and says that she understands the feelings of the main character, and he can do a DNA test to make sure. The main character says that his parents definitely just disappeared, and then he is asked to wait for the result. He holds his head with his hands. He opened his eyes wide. The girl pulls the main character by his jacket. The main character looked at the girl. Li-han apologizes to the main character, calling him brother. She cries and says that it's all because of her, because if she hadn't asked her aunt for help when the director hit her, her aunt and uncle wouldn't have taken her. The main character hugs a crying girl. He holds her close and says that it is not his fault. The officer approaches the main character and says that the result is ready. The main character cries while hugging Li-han. Officer Yuan says it's a 99% match and asks for her condolences. She stands silently in front of the main character and Li-han. A scientist with a stack of documents says that they have received the results. Bai Jintan turns to the scientist, who says that they have found that intruder. The document contains the details of the main character. Bai Jintan reads the document data. Tianjian, male, 26 years old. He graduated from Jingnan Normal University with excellent academic results, and 2 years ago, Tianjian's parents adopted a 4-year-old girl. But on the way back, both parents died in a car accident. Tianjian returned from Jingnan to Nanchang, inherited his parents' property, and is still farming to this day. Bai Jintan asks the girl if this is all. She replies that yes, there are no noteworthy elements in his dossier. The female scientist with a drop of sweat on her cheek says that the DNA test results confirm that this is the person who stole the flash drive. But how can Bai Jintan be sure that this is the same person who attacked him that day? The guy replies that Tianjian seems like a completely ordinary person, but an ordinary person is not able to fight him on equal terms. And that evening he showed amazing physical fitness. He remembers how he fought with a guy in a hood and says that this could not be done by a person who had been an absolute mediocrity for 20 years. According to his first version, this person has been hiding for 20 years, but judging by his skills, he is inexperienced enough that this version can be immediately discarded. He says that only the second version remains, according to which the physical fitness of this person has improved significantly only recently, and the only thing that could cause such an effect is a perfect mutation. Blue threads of energy emanate from the dark silhouette. Bai Jintan looks at the documents and says that this also explains why he protected that perfectly mutated wolf, because the source of their power and perfect mutation is the same. He adds that the power of an organization capable of creating 2 perfect mutants is simply amazing. The girl asks the guy what if his calculations initially turned out to be wrong, and whether it could be that their perfect mutation was caused by something unscientific. The guy asks her if she really wants to say that their mutation is not caused by a V-shaped virus. The girl throws up her hand and says that the probability of a perfect mutation from a V-shaped virus was initially only 0.00001%, and then asks where in Nanchang 2 could come from at once, if the number of perfect mutants discovered throughout the world is no more than a dozen. Bai Jintan carefully reads one of the documents. He made a wide smile. He says that there is another key in this world that allows a person to go through a perfect mutation. He imagines a key that envelops the plant. The guy puts the documents on the table. The black-haired man in the chair says that if there really is a case of successful human evolution, then the person he needs is interested in them too. He orders the UN officer standing in front of him to organize surveillance of both of them. The main character buys 2 pieces of fertilizer. He holds one of the bottles with fertilizer in his left hand, and in his right a basket of vegetables. He pours fertilizer onto the beds and a notification appears that the ripening time of level 4 divine crops has been reduced by 50 hours. The plants glow blue and have grown rapidly, followed by a notification that there are 128 hours left until maturity. Dan shouts that something is wrong with Xiao Hai. The main character and Li Han turn around. He asks his uncle what happened. Uncle says that for the last few days Xiao Hai has been constantly sitting on the roof, and today he cannot be reached, although usually he climbs there, but always comes down if called. He adds that something is wrong today and looks at the main character with a pitiful look. Xiao Hai stands on the roof and looks into the distance. Tianjian looks at him and thought that it was very similar to how he behaved before the first period of destruction, and his sensitivity became more acute after evolution. He commands patrol robots to search the farm area within a kilometer radius of the farm. Hummingbirds fly over the farm territory. Tianjian felt the vibration of the phone and thought that even at such a time, SMS notifications were still coming, and then wondered what kind of scammer this was and who would work on fulfilling the plan in such conditions. Tianjian looks at the smartphone screen. He made a shocked expression. He drops the basket of vegetables, and the girl calls for her brother. The wide-eyed protagonist asks what kind of cruel joke this is and what kind of disgusting prank this is. Li Han calls his brother again with a worried look on his face. The main character leaves the farm in his car. The camera films the main character's car. Bai Jintan is watching closely. He says the target has left the farm. A security guard sits next to him. The guard says that it is a little unnecessary to use the best drones like IVTA-2 for reconnaissance. Bai Jintan crosses his arms and tells the guard to look at the screen. He points his finger at the beds, and the guard asks what is there. Bai Jintan says that there are some miniature reconnaissance drones there. He adds that some old farm even has such equipment, and then asks the guard if he noticed that on this farm all the plants are alive, despite the fact that the soil is contaminated. The guard notes that this is true. The camera zooms in and Bai Jintan says that all over the world plants are now grown using hydroponics, and he himself understands how serious the consequences of eating plants infected with the V-shaped virus are. But the crops on this farm not only did not die, but, it seems, they were carefully looked after. The guy straightened his back and said that no matter how you look at it, everything seems abnormal, and it's hard to even tell if there are heavy weapons on the farm. He adds that he has already been injured by Tianjian once, and until they know exactly what he is capable of, they need to be extremely careful. The guard wondered if this was really a farm and noticed that it looked more like a military base. Bai Jintan smiles a little and says that he has already fully studied the structure of the farm, and as for the weapons, he asks to destroy them using a microwave explosion. He adds that if there is only a perfectly mutated beast there in Tianjian's absence, they have a high chance of catching it alive. 3 helicopters fly over the farm fence. Bai Jintan in one of the helicopters commands to activate the pulse particles 3 times. Blue waves emanate from helicopters. The TV on the farm turns off. The fan blades stop spinning. The electric wire on the fence is de-energized. Bai Jintan is preparing to jump from a helicopter and says that with 3 attacks, all electronic elements are disabled. He and other fighters jump from a helicopter. The main character stands at a gravestone in a cemetery. A hole has been dug next to him. The gravestone says that loving parents Li Bincheng and Wang Yu are buried here. The main character looks at the pit and calls those who did this scoundrels. The main character with an angry expression on his face says that this is not a joke. On the gravestone there is an image with the main character's parents. He receives messages where someone wrote that he has the ashes of his parents, and he also believes that the main character is convinced of this. The stranger sends another message, where he writes that the main character can take the ashes in exchange for the sacred beast, his arm and leg, for which he gives 1 day. The main character is silent with a contemptuous expression on his face. He says with an angry expression that if his parents knew that he was giving up his own arm and leg to get their ashes back, they would be so angry that they would appear in his sleep to beat him. He remembers Xiao Hai running through the forest and thought that this was really him. The main character with a smile on his face thought that Xiao Hai only took a walk once and already attracted a lot of people. The main character sends a message. He has a dog silhouette on his avatar. He asks the stranger why he decided that he could threaten him with a box of dust and writes that he can do whatever he wants with the ashes of his parents, but he promises that he will make him crawl to them on his knees and ask for forgiveness. The main character looked down and thought that this man had tracked down Xiao Hai and already knew about his strength, so he needed to get rid of him. He thought that it was an old woman from the forest, but soon discards this thought and thinks that if Tianjian wants to take revenge on him, he will not resort to such methods. Farm intrusion notifications appear. The main character turns sharply with his eyes wide open. Notifications appear that the enemy has high-precision modern weapons and the threat level is 99. Many soldiers are walking through the farm and one of them says that a thermal imaging response has been detected inside the building. The soldier orders the building to be surrounded, after which they approach the farmhouse. The soldier orders the others to stand as the response has disappeared. Xiao Hai stands on the roof with Li Han on his shoulders. The soldier with the machine gun looks around and asks where he went. Xiao Hai watches the soldiers with an angry expression. All the soldiers glow red in Li Han's eyes. She orders Xiao Hai to compost them. One of the windows breaks. Several more windows break. Stun grenades were thrown at them. One of the soldiers commands to search everything. They go inside the room and search everything. One of the soldiers asks if there is anyone inside. Night light illuminates the farmhouse. Bai Jintan stands in front of many soldiers. He bends down a little. He notices something and yells for everyone to come down. Many lasers appear from the side of the window and hit several soldiers. Bai Jintan dodges the attack. He shouts that this is an ambush with a dissatisfied expression on his face. The lasers hit another of the soldiers. The guy runs straight to the window. He jumps into it, breaking the glass. He lands on the ground near the house. Bai Jintan wonders if the pulse weapon didn't work. On the ground in front of the guy are 3 dead soldiers. The main character smiles madly. Bai Jintan opened his eyes wide. He wondered where combat robots and advanced technologies came from on an ordinary farm. The main character and Nan stand next to many fighting robots, and Bai Jintan stands in front of them. The main character with an angry expression on his face remembers the guy and says that he understood everything and adds that he did all this to take revenge. Drops of sweat run down Bai Jintan's cheek. The main character asks if he had to try hard to dig up something about him. The researcher replies that finding information about the main character was not so difficult, but that evening it exceeded all his expectations. He spreads his arms to the sides and says that since he has already driven them into a corner, he has nothing more to say. He doesn't have much time left anyway, and if the plan fails, he will die anyway, and to die here or die in a hospital bed makes no difference. He survives the strongest. Nan, with an angry expression on his face, tells the main character to quickly kill this gang from the corporation. He adds that the people from this company are nothing good, and the main character remains silent for some time. The main character stops his uncle with his hand. With a smile on his face, he tells the researcher that before killing him, he hopes that he himself will recognize where the ashes of the protagonist's parents are. Bai Jintan asks what kind of ashes we are talking about with a surprised expression on his face. The main character looks at him, puzzled. Bai Jintan made the same look with misunderstanding. Tianjian put his hands in his pocket and asked him if it was not he who stole the ashes. Bai Jintan asks the main character what kind of jokes he is making. The main character is silent for a short time. Someone threw the phone on the floor and it became covered in cracks. The ruler in a white robe with a hood shouts and calls the main character a disrespectful puppy. He kicks his phone and asks how someone can treat his mother's ashes like that and adds that if he were in his place, he wouldn't spare his own skin for the sake of his mother. He kicks his phone a few more times. A guy in a business suit with black hair exchanges glances with another guy in a business suit. The ruler shouts that because of the main character, all the snacks for mom have run out. The man with black hair tells the Lord to calm down. The Lord shouts that he is useless and trash. A man with black hair says that they have brought a new batch and it can be presented to the deity. The Lord turns to them and shouts that mom is already tired of these dirty creatures, and 2 guys in suits agree with him. The Lord shouts that mom wants a wolf cub and calls the 2 guys worthless and they occupy such high positions. But they can't even bring the sacred beast. One of the men tries to say something, but the bishop interrupts him and says that he doesn't want to listen. The creature clings to the edge of the pit. It calls the name Xiao Sheng and the Lord's eyes open wide. The Lord goes towards the creature and calls him a great deity and mother. He moves closer to the pit, and the 2 guys look at each other with concern on their faces. Vladika smiles and tells his mother that he missed her so much. The image of a woman with long hair calls Xiao Sheng a baby and stretches out her arms to him. Vladika tells his mother that she has finally come to see him again. He clings to the image of the woman and cries, and then says that he is so useless he cannot even bring her the wolf cub that she wanted, and then asks her not to be angry with him. He says that she will be happy after absorbing him and then she will not be angry with him. An unnatural creature with sharp limbs sticking out appeared from the hole. His part is located next to the Lord and says that he is great and eats his word. The main character with a serious expression on his face asks Bai Jinten if he stole the ashes of his parents. The guy with a surprised expression on his face asks the main character what kind of jokes he is making. Tianjian thought that it really wasn't him, but it's strange because Xiao Hai bit him on the neck, and how can he stand here unharmed after that? Blue energy emanates from the protagonist's eye. He uses the Eye of Truth. He looks at Bai Jinten and sees his characteristics and description. He is a person with unfavorable development, specialization, cytologist, left to live 118 hours, strength 21, intelligence 18, speed 23, endurance 18. Description: a person whose evolution took a distorted path for using the power of twisted evolution to save himself from death. If the breakdown of the corrupted mutant gene in his body is not stopped within 118 hours, then the force that saved his life will plunge him into hell. The main character narrowed his eyes and thought that it seemed that the irradiated plants caused distorted evolution. But thanks to the perfect mutant Xiao Hai gene and their fusion, he managed to briefly extend his life. Tianjian remembers how Xiao Hai bit Bai Jinten and thought that his target was Xiao Hai's perfect genome. The main character with a serious expression on his face tells the researcher that even though it was not he who stole the ashes, but the purpose for which he came does not smell good to him and he cannot let him out of here. Combat robots aim towards the researcher and soldiers. Bai Jinten shouts to the main character to wait. The robots concentrate laser energy in their guns, but do not fire. The researcher tells the main character that his parents' ashes are important to him and he can possibly help get them back. The main character listens to him with an angry expression on his face. Bai Jinten, with a drop of sweat running down his cheek, says that there are no insoluble differences or fierce hatred between them. He adds that he needs a perfect gene, but he is only acting for reasons of self-preservation, and why don't they turn this war into a deal? The main character made a surprised expression on his face. The main character raises his hand and commands the robots to stop. The robots lower their guns. Bai Jinten exhales and says that they can exchange resources. The main character asks the guy if he can help him return the ashes. Bai Jinten says he has extensive connections, resources, and technology, making it much easier to find someone in Nanchang than if he did it himself. Tianjian replies that this bargaining chip is too small and if he needs a perfect gene, then the main character will sooner or later get to that person. Bai Jinten remains silent with a dissatisfied expression on his face. Tianjian tells the guy that he is very curious about what he said about how he has the people and resources, and not Tianjin. He asks what connects him with the company. Bai Jinten says that strictly speaking he is not a member of the company, and he only takes his own side and has nothing to do with the interests of any of the parties. He tells the main character with a serious expression that he has nothing against him and he doesn't care whether he killed Lian Tianyu or attacked Zhen Xiao in the villa. He adds that he just needs to get what he needs. He takes a step and says that in other words, he can become the protagonist's tool. Tianjian crossed his arms and said that this is interesting, and calls out the name of the main character in a raised tone. Bai Jinten approaches the main character and says that he receives a convenient tool in exchange for a life-saving genome. He extends his hand and says that everyone wins. The main character smiles while looking at the guy. He passes by Bai Jinten. He tells him to order his men to drop their weapons and put their hands behind their heads, then sit in the corner of the wall and follow him. Li Han sits on the shoulders of Xiao Hai, who is standing next to the main character, and the glowing robot. Bai Jinten stands in front of them. Li Han uses his talent, the eyes of good and evil. Bai Jinten is enveloped in a green aura. The girl shows an approving gesture. The main character says that there is no need to be nervous and this is the genome that he wanted. Bai Jinten asks if this is really that completely mutated beast and how it became like this. There are many white lines on Xiao Hai's dark silhouette. The main character says that if his guesses are correct, in the process of a perfect mutation, Xiao Hai's genes were combined with human ones and he received these genes from a researcher, and given the compatibility of their genes, his genome should stop his distorted evolution. Bai Jinten with a smile on his face says that this is the most perfect mutation he has ever seen, because even the mutated high-level beast king in the south of Xinjiang, fused with human genes, turned into only an unconscious monster with the instinct of frantic hunger. He says with a happy expression that Xiao Hai has not only retained self-awareness, but also obeys human commands. So if he only unravel the secret of his genome, mass production can begin. The main character claps his hands and says enough is enough. With a smile on his face, he says that the tour is over and now it's time to make a deposit. He shows the smartphone and tells him to help him track this number, check all the call records and geolocation of this number for the last 10 days. He turns the phone a little, and since he is very picky when choosing tools, he tells him to show what he can do. The main character smiles with his eyes closed and says that he needs to try and get that person as quickly as possible. Bai Jinten exhales and says he understands. A helicopter flies into the farm area. A guy in a hood comes out. He approaches the main character and Bai Jinten, calling him boss. He is wearing glasses and with a lollipop in his mouth. He tells the boss that he should have gotten him out of the base, because he would have done everything from there. A capable hacker, Lan Nin. Bai Jinten tells him to stop talking and better let him find out the geolocation of this number, and then shows him the smartphone. The hacker lowers his glasses and asks if he really flew just for these people. He points his finger at him and tells him to fix the chip at Chief Lee's house, which will be an apology for him using a pulse weapon. The main character crossed his arms and thought that he knew how to do business. The hacker opens the laptop and asks the researcher who said that he is his boss, and then calls him uncle and himself a loser. Tianjan asks the researcher in a whisper if he is reliable. Bai Jinten replies that he knows his business. Lan Ning is typing on his laptop. He looks at the laptop screen and mumbles something. Tianjan asks Bai Jinten how he became a mutant and adds that this is really his era of the gods. An imaginary silhouette of the explorer appears with a bony structure on its back and red lines on it. He tells the main character that he did look at the files on the disk, and then says that he admits that the main character succeeded in this much faster and better. He adds that 10 days after the world changed, his team extracted a V-shaped virus from irradiated plants, which becomes a source of mutation in those who eat it. A green silhouette of a wolf appears with plants behind him. The researcher says that experiments have shown that the V-shaped virus, although it causes cells to divide, also significantly increases the likelihood of distorting evolution and ultimately resulting in a bunch of deformed and short-lived monsters that can only continue to eat. He adds that he thinks he can draw inspiration from Xiao Hai's genes. The main character looks at the researcher with a slightly angry look and asks whether it really turns out that he made these conclusions after a large number of experiments on people using this so-called virus. Bai Jinten with a smile on his face says that he does not at all think that his methods are cruel, and he adds that there are many examples in history when countless data about the human structure were obtained through cold-blooded experiments on people, and, moreover, before he came to Tianjin, they have already conducted experiments on humans under the leadership of Lion Tianyu. He asks if it would be better to let them benefit others than to hang on their last legs, and then adds that he, too, would not mind being a guinea pig before dying. And although he failed, he still gained valuable information. The main character grits his teeth and calls the guy crazy, after which Bai Jinten laughs. He put his hands in his pockets and says that this is the development of biology and science, because only after walking over countless corpses did they reach today's heights. With a joyful expression on his face, he says that in the new post-apocalyptic world, nothing will change. The laptop screen is reflected in the hacker's glasses. Lan Nin types on the keyboard and says that he found it and has already sent the information. The main character looks at the screen of his smartphone. He sees an icon indicating that one message has arrived. The main character tells the hacker that he did not leave his email address. Lan Nin, with an angry expression on his face, calls the main character a dinosaur and says that one photo of him is enough for him to dig up all the information in 10 minutes. The guy's glasses show the current charge level. The hacker looks at the main character and Bai Jinten and tells the main character that he heard every word he said just now, and if he doubts his abilities again, he will hack his phone and start a live broadcast at the moment when he is taking a shower. The main character's face looks puzzled, and Bai Jinten pressed his hand to his face and says that he is a talker, but he follows professional ethics. The researcher, with a grim expression on his face, tells the hacker that if he continues to talk nonsense, he will cut funding. The hacker replies that it is not necessary, but he fell silent and is now working. Morning light illuminates the large temple building. One of the two white-robed guards yawns as a hummingbird flies by. The guy pays attention to something. He sees a small robot in front of him and asks whether even in the cold such moths still fly. Another guard asks the first one if he is poisonous, because now so many creatures have mutated, and how could this moth turn out to be something like that? Hummingbird shoots the first guard in the head. The hummingbird's second shot knocks out the second guard. Tianjan stands on the roof of the temple. He looks at the two guards lying on the ground and tells them to get some sleep. The chest contains two red items. A man in a robe opens the chest and, turning to the deity, says that they sing his will and thank him for his great strength and love, and then asks to grant the desired reality by reincarnating an immortal body. He lifts the chest above him and says that the rebirth ceremony begins in the name of their god Kate Saul. Near him stand followers with black and blue patterns of petals. At some distance all the other followers with green patterns stand. 2 acolytes take red items from the chest. They hold them in their hands and eat them. The Lord, with a smile on his face, tells them to irrigate the fruits with the nectar of the sacrifice and quickly complete the rebirth. Behind the curtain lies the corpse of a woman with green hair. The tortured corpse of a woman lies on the altar. 2 novices approach the corpse. They eat the woman's flesh. They behave like animals, bending over the woman's body. The main character opens his eyes wide. He watches what is happening in horror and calls the cultists scoundrels. The main character kills one of the cultists in the head. The flesh-eating novice sees the guy next to him fall to the ground. Panic begins in the temple. Novices scream out of fear. The Lord shouts and asks what is happening. Who is here and how dare he interrupt the rebirth ceremony? He looks at the ceiling of the temple and notices something. He sees the main character, who is visible through the destroyed part of the roof. Xianjian gritted his teeth and held a pistol in his hand with smoke emanating from the barrel. The Lord with a menacing look asks the main character who he is. The main character with an angry expression on his face shouts and answers that he is his grandfather and orders the hummingbird to kill these scoundrels. Robots fly towards enemies. One of the cultists covers the ruler with his body and shouts to protect him. Many hummingbird shots hit the cultists, who scream about running and asking for help. Several hummingbird shots hit the cultists protecting the Lord. The 2 cultists run towards the double doors and tell the others to run and that the guards to the left and right have been killed. The main character immediately descends to the ruler, who is trembling. The main character goes to him and says that he thought that he was just a little dirty trickster who stole the ashes, but he could not even imagine that they were worse than cattle. The Lord, with a frightened expression on his face, asks the main character Tianjian if he is. The protagonist aims a pistol at the cultist's head. He tells Xiao Sheng to return his parents' ashes and then he will let him die a quick death. The Lord looks to the side and a drop of sweat runs down his cheek. Next to him lies the corpse of one of the cultists. Black tentacles emerge from his mouth. The Lord with a smile on his face tells the main character that if he kills him, he will never receive the ashes and let him kill since he is so smart. Tianjian asks him not to provoke him, and the cultist laughs. The corpse of a cultist stands behind the main character. The main character notices noise from a cultist behind him. The Lord laughs with a smile and tells the main character to continue to dare and adds that he is finished, because his brothers have hatched. The main character turns back. A monster with a purple eye emerges from the cultist's body. The main character looks at a monster with wings in front of him. The guy clenches his teeth and looks scared. Another monster emerged completely from the cultist's body. 2 monsters have approached each other and are in front of the main character. The monster opens its mouth with sharp teeth. Drops of water flow down from his body. The main character, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, materializes a second pistol. He takes aim with one of the pistols and calls the monsters disgusting freaks. The monster has a long tongue behind sharp teeth. They fly towards the main character. Tianjian fires 2 pistols. The skin of the first monster is not pierced by bullets. The second monster also did not receive any damage from the hits. The main character thought that there were really scratches and added that the gun was useless. The monsters attack the main character, but he dodges. The main character opens the system backpack and the pistol in his hand disappears. He looks through the store and wonders if there are any other deadly weapons. He scrolls through the interface and thought that something like a bazooka would be just right. An error notification appears. Tianjian cannot buy a weapon due to lack of points, and he thinks that he just recently bought an armful of seeds and now he does not have enough points. The main character runs away from monsters and calls hummingbirds. Robots shoot monsters. The creature did not receive any damage. The main character is hiding around the corner and thought that this was just an ordinary sect that took advantage of the end of the world to make money and do evil. But he did not expect that they had such a strange monster hidden, and if he had known, he would have brought a couple with him large combat robots. The Lord calls the main character a psycho and asks where he is hiding. Monsters are approaching the main character. Tianjian thought that he was now in a difficult situation, since there was no more white corn and ordinary weapons could not kill these monsters. The main character materializes pistols and thought that then he would simply shoot them in the eyes to gain time. He looked away. He sees a violet eye looking straight at him. The wall collapses and the main character runs away. He turns around and thought that the enemy was fast. The monster attacks the main character, which greatly pushes him away. The temple wall collapses due to a strong blow. The call comes in on a landline phone. Officer Yuan picks up the phone and says this is the Nanchang police station. The old woman in a white scarf says that the officer finally answered, and then says that there was an explosion near his house, and there were also some strange sounds and noises. It seems to her that it is a monster who is rampaging, and so he asks the officer to come and check, and then adds that she is just an old woman with a frightened child. A woman looks at a huge amount of smoke in the distance and is hugged by a child. Officer Yuan has a drop of sweat running down his cheek and asks him to tell him where the explosion was. She tells her subordinates to assemble a cleanup team and follow it, because there may be second or third level mutants on the outskirts of the city. One of the subordinates says that he will inform them. Another asks if there really are monsters of this level in the city and says that he is eager to see it, to see if they can catch one and demand a reward from the boss. Officer Yuan with a gun in his hand says that if there is a third level mutant there, then you shouldn't take it so lightly. She reports that this will not be as easy as dealing with an ordinary first level monster. The main character leaves a huge dent on the wall after being attacked by a monster. The monsters are heading towards him. Tianjian materialized a healing tomato and thought that although he knocked out their eyes, it only slowed them down a little, and his ribs were broken. The monster looks at the main character with its mouth wide open. The Lord puts his hand forward and tells the main character that he chose the wrong time to eat, and that he will not be able to resist with such wounds and will become an excellent snack for the brothers. The monster makes a dash towards the main character. The main character looks at the enemy with fear. The monster destroys the wall with its attack. The main character is pushed far back. The Lord smiles and asks if the main character is dead. The monsters get stuck in a hole in the wall and the ruler asks them if they are pigs. Two monsters are trying to get out from the side where the main character lies. The Lord, with concern on his face, says that they cannot enter this room, because his goods are there. The main character with a frightened face thought that it was close and he was almost caught. He looks to the side and hears someone asking to save him. The Lord shouts to the monsters that they cannot go there and tells them not to touch the goods. Many girls in chains look at the main character and ask him to save them. People are shaking and looking very scared. The main character thought that this was really a product and that the girl who was sacrificed was also a product. The main character clenched his teeth in anger and thought how many people these scoundrels managed to kill. The monsters are actively trying to get out of the hole. Cracks appear in the wall around them. The main character turns around and thought it was rubbish. The girls scream when they see the monsters trying to get out. Their faces look very scared and desperate. The main character looks at the monster and thought that he cannot allow them to get through here. He pays attention to something. He sees a lot of boxes around and realizes that this is a warehouse, and it looks like they are using the girls as more than just goods. Among the boxes are beaded necklaces. Other boxes contain food. The main character notices that there is also a lot of food. Gold bars, jewelry, and antiques. The statue of an angel holds a sword rack in its hands. The main character thought that he did not expect such treasures to be hidden here. Tianjian pushes off the floor. He makes several jumps and climbs onto the statue. He stands on the shoulder of the statue and thought that this is actually the Hendao of the Tang dynasty, and its forging technology is one of the most advanced in the world. It has a durable and incredibly sharp blade that is not easy to break. The main character looks at the sword and thought that one could say that this is the pinnacle of sword forging skill. He sheathed it and thought it was great. The main character looks at two monsters. He clenched his teeth and thought that things were bad and they were breaking through. The cracks are getting stronger. Tianjian thinks that he can try this sword and see if it can cut these creatures. The main character holds a sword in two hands and runs towards the enemy with a menacing expression on his face. He makes two lightning strikes against monsters. The sword left cuts on them. The attack worked, but it is not enough, and with his current strength, he cannot kill them with one attack. The monsters are trying harder to get out and Tianjian thought that this only angered them. The main character runs away from them and thought that in any case, he first needed to get out of here. He screams for the monsters to kill him, calling them stupid bugs. The monsters got out of the hole and are running after Tianjian. The main character runs around the room. He stopped and turned towards the enemies. The main character clenched his teeth and thought that they had taken the bait. The monster intends to attack the protagonist. The main character put his sword forward. The golden part of the sword hilt shines. Tianjian swings his sword at the enemy. He cut one monster twice. He cut the other monster once. Sparks emit from the sword due to the monster's hard skin. The main character blocks the monster's attack with his sword. The monster attacks the main character with its tail and hits him. The guy is pushed straight into the wall. He was coughing because of the pain and thought that it was difficult to inflict fatal damage by attacking the shell, and it was not worth delaying it for too long. He decides to start from the weak points. The main character has an anxious look. The monster is getting closer and closer to him. Tianjian looks very scared. He looked closely at something and thought that this was it. He holds the sword with both hands. Streams of air and blue energy gather around the protagonist's sword. He makes a lightning strike with his sword. The sword pierces the monster's head. The main character punches his head right through. He clenches his teeth and screams loudly. He made a menacing expression on his face. The main character makes a cutting blow and cuts off the monster's head. A powerful stream of energy follows the sword. Tianjian is enveloped in blue energy. He is breathing heavily and has drops of purple blood on his face and torso. The main character looks at another monster. The monster looks at the main character and stands in one place. The shackled women tremble. The Lord clenched his teeth and shouted that the main character stole his precious collectible item. He clenched his hand into a fist and shouted that his brothers would eat the main character without leaving a single bone. The cultist looks away because he noticed someone. The main character appeared from the back and pointed a sword at the ruler's head. The Lord says that he is finished. The frightened ruler says, how is this possible? Because the shells of worker ants do not even take bullets and he cannot believe that he killed them. He adds that if the main character offends important people, they will not leave him alone. The main character with an angry expression on his face asks why they are afraid of him if he can kill monsters, and then tells him to go to hell. The Lord asks him to stop. The main character swings his sword, but someone shoots at the blade. He lowers his sword. The main character turns towards the sound of the shot. He sees Officer Yuan with an assault rifle, who asks the protagonist to put down his sword. The Lord asks to help him, because the main character wants to kill him and asks them to shoot. The main character with an angry expression on his face says that they should not aim at him, but at the cultist. The officer asks the guy what he means. The main character tells the girl to look around carefully. She looked to the side and saw girls shackled. More girls are hiding behind one of the columns. A drop of sweat runs down the girl's cheek. One of the officer's subordinates says that some of these girls were considered missing and he saw their photographs, so there can be no mistake. She sees a lot of boxes and bags and with an alarmed expression on her face says, what are these objects? Girls, what are they? One of the police officers calls Officer Yuan and tells her that things are worse than they thought. He approaches her and says that in the main hall they found the body of a woman killed in a strange way, as well as several other shot dead cult members, and in addition, in the next hall there are 2 corpses of monsters. The girl looks at the main character. She says not to try to resist as this place is under police control. She orders to inform the police station, the hospital and several other units that everyone who is free should come here now. The ruler's hands are handcuffed. 2 policemen accompany him and he laughs. He sticks his tongue out at the main character and laughs. He clearly pronounces each letter and asks the main character what he will do for him. The main character is very angry about this. Destructive energy is concentrated around him. He clutches the katana tightly in his hand. Officer Yuan lowers the protagonist's katana and tells him that they have already met. Tianjian, with a crazy expression on his face, asks the girl who she is. The officer replies that the main character came to her to identify bodies after a car accident 3 years ago. With a serious expression on his face, he says that there was one female police officer, and it turns out it was her. He adds that she has a good memory and seems to have guessed what he was going to do when she stopped him. Yuan says that although the main character hates him, he can act rashly. She introduces herself as Yuan Wen from the Nanchang Military Police Station, and she is sure that the protagonist has already met Bai Jingming, and the protagonist's DNA obtained 3 years ago led them to him. The main character looks at her with a stern look. She asks him to calm down and listen to her. The girl tells the main character that he heard what the cultists said and nothing is over yet, so they cannot kill him. She adds that she knows that the main character has incredible strength, and even though there are many of them, they may not be able to stop the assassination. But the Yanhuan Federation is still under the control of the military police and the parliament, and this is not a place where one can commit lynching. Yuan asks the protagonist to trust the military police because they will not spare a single culprit, and this is their duty. She invites him to cooperate with them and tell him everything he knows. The main character is silent for a short time. He sheaths his sword. The girl thanks the main character for his cooperation. Ambulance workers and police officers take the injured girls out. Doctors examine their condition. The parents cry over being reunited with their daughter. Yuan Wen accompanies the main character and someone calls her. The policeman approaches her and asks what to write in the report about the dead. The girl replies that he should write that during the arrest they encountered fierce resistance, so they were forced to fight back and as a result, the other party was seriously injured and died. The policeman replies that he understands. The main character listened to everything they said. The girl asks to follow her. The main character looks at the stretcher. He sees a bloody hand peeking out from under the cloth. The main character made a gloomy expression on his face. He turns his head the other way. He hears people thanking him and turns his gaze towards the voice. A girl with brown hair tells the main character that he saved her. She stands next to her mother and says that if the main character hadn't made a fuss to attract the police, they would all have been sold as toys for the rich and powerful, and would have ended up being sacrificed for those disgusting bugs. The main character asks what toys we are talking about. Officer Ewan, with a surprised expression on his face, asks the girl if she knows something. She rests her chin and says with a thoughtful look that she used to be a member of a self-help society, and they said that it was a regular organization where they could buy food at a low price if they brought people. But a few days ago, after she found out about them true target, she tried to escape, but they found and locked her up. She adds that before she was caught, she saw where they kept the ledger. Ewan Wen, with a worried expression on his face, asks the girl to tell her more. The girl tells them the details. Someone is watching them through the rear view window of the car. They are watched by a man with short hair smoking a cigarette. He exhales smoke and says that the ruler is under control, after which he commands to go. The policeman takes notes in front of the injured girls, and the doctor goes to the stretcher lying near the police car. Another police car drives by in the background. The main character sits on a chair in the interrogation room and calls for an officer. He says that everything has already been figured out and asks if he can go. He puts his hands on the back of his head and with his eyes closed says that he still has a lot of things to do at home. Ewan is standing next to another policeman and they are watching the main character through the glass. The girl says that she does not agree with this approach to resolving this matter. The brown-haired policeman says that since ancient times it has been the case that even if he acted with the best intentions, it will not change the fact that he committed a crime. He is a little angry and says that he is an ordinary citizen and he has no power to judge and kill others. The girl replies that yes, he does not have such a right, but this is only if they could find the girls before he did it. She looks down and asks if the authorities have issued an order to detain him. The man says the young precinct is still awaiting a response from the city council. He adds that it doesn't seem like the higher-ups will tolerate the presence of such a dangerous person as Tian Jian. Officer Yuan Wen says that the world is changing, and the military and police forces are not enough, and it is difficult to say what the law will be in the future. She adds that even though the authorities have still not responded, he is in a hurry to condemn Tian Jian. She turns towards the guy with brown hair. She crosses her arms and tells Chief Cheng that he might be nervous about not fulfilling his duties. She says with a slightly furious expression that this is why she has prepared to send evidence of the violation of the law directly to the boss's desk as soon as a response is received from higher management, and this is just a way to make his job easier. She asks whether such an innocent treatment will truly bring justice to the girls who were killed and trafficked. The guy points his finger at her and calls her name with an angry expression on his face. He made a gloomy expression on his face and tells the officer to watch his words, and he doesn't care what her background is. He is the boss here, and she is his subordinate. Cheng orders her to apprehend the protagonist and take him into custody. The girl looks upset by these words. Someone opens the door behind Cheng and asks him what he is doing. The guy turns around and asks her what he is doing here. Yuan Zhenghong, the chief inspector of the Handong County Military Police Department with gray hair, and Yuan Yi, a senior police officer with black hair, enter the room. The inspector tells the guy that Yang Yun taught him well, and he is becoming more and more promising as an employee. He adds that he is not very good at catching criminals, but he is good at making threats. Cheng Yui, with a frightened expression on his face, says that he can't do anything, because this is an order from above. The inspector asks who is on top, Yang Yun or Van Dongchuan. Yuan Zhenghong asks the guy to stand here and recite the police code 20 times. The inspector asks Officer Yuan Wen to outline what happened and then take him to a young man named Tian Jian. Cheng Yui looks angry. The girl reports to her superiors that Tian Jian is now in interrogation room number 3 and asks to follow her. The main character looks towards the entrance. The inspector asks the main character if he is Tian Jian. The protagonist replies that yes, it is him. Yuan Zhenghong pulls back his chair and introduces himself to the main character. The main character is surprised to learn that he is the chief inspector of the district administration. He crosses his arms and says that if this case requires a high-ranking officer like him to come here and interrogate him personally, then he won't get out of here so easily. The inspector laughs and tells the main character not to worry, because he is here because he wants him to look at some document. He takes out the document and says that the main character would be interested to know about the changes in the two mutated monsters and therefore brought it for him. The main character, with a wary look, asks again about the fact that the document was brought for him. The inspector smiles and says that, to be precise, he brought it for people like him. The main character takes out a document from a folder. He sees photographs of creepy monsters. He made a worried expression on his face. In the photo with the monster, he sees human faces. Yuan Zhenghong folded his hands on the table and said that this mutant was found in the Koranma Mountains 5 days ago, and when he was surrounded, they discovered that he eats people. The main character opened his eyes wide. The inspector says that later they discovered human faces on his back and he became more and more intelligent, and he even managed to fool the troops. The faces in the photograph have bloody eyes. The inspector asks the main character if he knows what this means. The main character looks through the documents and says that the intelligence and actions of these monsters are becoming more and more similar to humans, and is it possible that they no longer have restrictions on mutations? The inspector rests his chin in his hands and says that this means that they are no longer limited to merging the genes of different animals to develop their bodies. They succeeded in merging human genes to gain intelligence, resulting in the birth of a new species. He adds that they call these intelligent creatures kings of beasts. A shadow falls on the inspector's face and he says that they have recorded at least 5 cases of these mutant beasts appearing in Yanhuan, and this number should be growing. The main character folds the documents and asks why they are telling him all this. The inspector calls Yuan with his hand and says his name. The officer places the capsule on the table. Inside it are 2 red eggs. The main character does not have time to say what it is, and Yuan Zhenghong replies that everything is correct. These are 2 eggs that have not yet hatched, and after the main character shot 2 cult members, they stopped developing in their bodies. The main character made a surprised expression on his face. The inspector adds that their scientists extracted them and studied the genome. The main character opened his eyes wide. The inspector says that the genes of insects and animals predominate for the most part, but there are a small number of human genes. He pauses in conversation. The main character asks the inspector what he wants to say. Yuan Zhenghong replies there is a good chance that the King of Beasts is hiding in Nancheng and creating his own kind.